I'm Phyllis Jackson.
While promoting his COVID-19 relief plan, President Biden says that 600 million doses of the coronavirus vaccine will be available by the end of July. FEMA launches the opening of its first COVID-19 vaccination sites in Los Angeles and Oakland as part of the Biden administration's plan to pick up the pace of vaccine distribution. The winter weather is hindering vaccination efforts in many states, including here in Georgia. In a release, the Georgia Department of Public Health says it received notice from the CDC that Pfizer and Moderna vaccines that should have arrived earlier this week were held back by the manufacturers due to the weather. Delays are expected to continue through the week. Many providers are rescheduling appointments. Officials with the Department of Public Health are asking for patience as they wait for weather conditions to improve and shipments to resume. Doctors are concerned about an increase of an extremely rare multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children after exposure to COVID-19. The condition leads to inflammation of the body's major organs. Here's what you need to know. The CDC has a list of symptoms that you should be aware of. Not all children will have the same symptoms. Among the more serious, trouble breathing, chest pain, or pressure that doesn't go away, along with severe abdominal pain. For a full list of symptoms of multisystem inflammatory syndrome, you can go to the CDC's website at cdc.gov.
That's a wrap. We'll see you on the next edition of Stay at Home Connect.
Carolyn Long Banks is the first black woman to be appointed and elected to the Atlanta City Council. An important part of Atlanta history, Banks was among a group of Atlanta University students forming the Committee on the Appeal for Human Rights, known as the Atlanta Student Movement. Banks and others committed to nonviolence took part in sit-ins at local segregated lunch counters and cafeterias in the Georgia State Capitol, as well as area restaurants that turned black patrons away. Their courageous acts would open the doors to desegregation of Atlanta's businesses, schools, and medical facilities. Carolyn Long Banks served the city of Atlanta from 1980 to 1997. I'm Atlanta City Council member Amir Faroqi. The legacy lives.
Marvin Stevens Arrington Sr. made an unforgettable mark on the city of Atlanta. He was elected to the Atlanta Board of Aldermen in 1969. The name of that legislative body was changed to the Atlanta City Council in 1974. Arrington served as council president for 17 years. Among many other important causes, Arrington fought diligently to address issues of discrimination and led the charge to require the recording of all standing committee meetings and city council meetings. He also courageously appointed a woman to chair the Finance Committee. After stepping down from the council, his service to the city continued. In 2002, Governor Roy Barnes appointed Arrington to become Fulton County Superior Court Judge, where he served for 10 years before retiring. Arrington's dedication and commitment to serve would not go unnoticed. In 2019, the Atlanta City Council voted unanimously to rename the council chamber in his honor. I am Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore. The legacy lives.
The Carrie Steele Pitts home. The founder, Carrie Steele Logan, was an emancipated slave who moved to Atlanta during Reconstruction while working as a maid at the Union Railroad station and encountered many abandoned children. Her compassionate heart and her experience as an orphan compelled her to care for them in her very own home. Carrie raised money to build a larger space and founded what would become the oldest Black orphanage in the country, the Carrie Still Pitts Home. Locations have changed, but the commitment to children remains. Her epitaph at Oakland Cemetery reads, "The mother of orphans, she hath done what she could." I'm Atlanta City Council member Andrea Boone. The legacy lives.
Zernona Clayton is a civil rights activist who worked alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Clayton moved to Atlanta in 1965 after taking a job with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She also traveled with Coretta Scott King during concert tours. She's the first Black person to have her own TV show, a corporate executive for Turner Broadcasting for nearly 3 decades. Clayton is the founder, president, and CEO of the Trumpet Awards Foundation Incorporated, and creator and executive producer of the Trumpet Awards show, which honors the accomplishments of Black Americans. The city of Atlanta honored Clayton with the dedication of a street and park plaza for a lifetime of contributions to humanity. I'm Atlanta City Council member Jennifer Ide. The legacy lives.
The Atlanta Police Department saw major change in 1948 when it hired its first Black police officers. Soon to come along in its ranks in 1950 was Claude Everett Mundy. While responding to a burglary on January 5, 1961, on Parkway Drive, Officer Mundy became the first Black officer to be shot and killed in the line of duty. Officer Mundy was 39 years old and left behind a wife and 5 children. He was recently honored with a proclamation during the 60th commemoration of his death. His family was there celebrating his life and his undeniable bravery. I'm Atlanta City Council member Michael Julian Bond. The legacy lives.
Some of these individuals, these young men, 20 years old, facing 77 years, aggravated assault and having a weapon in their hand, and some of these crimes just triple and double. And these individuals have had to serve time, but they're in a program, a mentoring program like the Next Level Boys Academy that's changing their lives, that shows them there's a better way, and they don't have to do these things anymore, and that they can take life in their own hands by going out there and learning how to cut grass, get a job, and they're better for it. Their wants and their needs are now known. So they don't have to go after things that they want and taking it from someone else. They can go after the things that they need, work hard for it, and keep working to get the things that they want. This is now a wonderful thing. And here at the gathering spot, they gave us the space, the opportunity to do it. And at the end of it, they're even offering some of these young men jobs. And some of the business community needed to hear that because they can also continue to offer these young men jobs. And that's one thing that's going on here. And that's why we wanted to do it, to show that there's a pathway out of poverty, and there's a pathway out of some of these poor choices that young men make. And right now, we heard from the DA, we heard from the sheriff, and we talked about solutions. And we're going to keep doing that discussion as we make policies and plans to improve.
I'm grateful for all of the partners that have come in today, once again to show how much Atlanta is a caring community. You know, we have families that are hurting, that they are trying to take care of housing and food, and making sure that all family members have safe, winter clothing, clean winter clothing. These are brand new coats, and we want the community to know that they don't have to be without. We have food giveaways, and now we are having a coat giveaway for families in need.
Good afternoon. This is Councilmember George Shepard, Chair of Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, and we are going to now officially call together a work session to discuss with the Fulton County Sheriff on ACDC acquisition, the Detention Center acquisition plan. You all know we have been going through a series of workshops and work sessions to talk about the contemplated closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. This is our series. This is another of those work sessions to look at all the information and pull it all together and look at the whole process of closing that comprehensively. So today we will be listening to Chief Pat Labatt from the Fulton County. He's the new sheriff of Fulton County. He will be presenting for us. And so we welcome you all here. Ms. Lindo, can we do a roll call?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Yes, we have Councilmember Felicia Moore here. We have Councilmember Carlos Smith. We have Councilmember Jennifer Ide. We have Councilmember Andre Dickens, Councilmember J.P. Mazzicai, Councilmember Matt Westmoreland, Councilmember Howard Shook, and Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet, and Councilmember Andrea Boone. On the line, Madam Chair. Hello?
Yes. I'm sorry. I was talking and I was muted. I was just talking and didn't realize I was muted. Thank you. We also have with us as guests Ms. Fannie Willis from Fulton County District Attorney's Office, also Mr. Keith Gamage from Fulton County Solicitor's Office. Both of them are actually with us. They are not presenting today, but they are here as a part of this work session for any questions we may have for them in reference to Fulton County and the court system and what's happening in Fulton County side also. So with that, Ms. Lindo, would you also do the remote public meeting statement?
Yes, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Today's Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee work session will be conducted remotely as advertised and in accordance with Georgia Code Section 50-14-1. The public may access the meeting conference bridge toll-free by dialing 877-579-6743 and entering conference ID number 831-599-1256. This This information was also posted in a public notice that was published on the City Council website at citycouncil.atlanta.ga.gov and distributed on Monday, February 15, 2021. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlanta.ga.gov, Facebook and Twitter pages at HCL Council, and the Council's YouTube channel. Today's presentation is available on the Atlanta City Council website on the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee presentations page. The public was able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6092 yesterday between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. These comments will be played during the public comment portion of this meeting. All persons present on this meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Meeting participants wishing to speak must be acknowledged by the committee chair. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Thank you, Ms. Lindo. I will let you all know that at this point, we have 60 public comments, which is equivalent to 1 hour and possibly 5 minutes. We will hear those public comments at the end. We don't have to hear them on the front end since we're not voting on making a decision today. So we will hold those public comments until the very end of the work session, and then we will listen to those public comments. So with that, we will now move forward to the part of our agenda that's really important. I'd like to bring on Sheriff Patrick Labatt, Fulton County Sheriff, to give us a presentation on the Fulton County plan for the Atlanta City Detention Center. Sheriff Labatt.
First of all, good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope you can hear me. Technology is great when it works. And so thank you, Madam Chair, for an opportunity to be heard and to really have a discussion that hopefully I can, at whatever appointed time, should you or any of the chair members have a question, I certainly will. I will be more than happy to answer those questions. So let me move toward the...
Sheriff Labatt, could you hold this for 1 minute? I do need to I was remiss in not making one other statement. The mayor's office is also with us today. COO King from the mayor's office is here. So he's also available. He and his department is available to ask any questions also from the executive office of the mayor. So thank you. And with that, I'll let you proceed, Mr. Labatt.
Thank you again. Thank you again. Well, but first let me say this is I appreciate the opportunity to address the committee and those listening. Most of you all know me as the former jailer or former chief jailer and commissioner or chief of the Department of Corrections in the city of Atlanta. Did that for 10 years and prior to that worked my way up through the ranks there. So jails is what I do. I have been fortunate to be retired for a little less than a year, where I have now, thanks to the citizens of Fulton County, have become the 28th sheriff of Fulton County. So, that said, if we go to the next slide, we can start this overview. And as we get ready to move through it, you'll see just some facts in the overview. The city of Atlanta and Fulton County have a unique opportunity to bridge the gap between restorative justice and social change. Really, the goal here is to enhance public safety as I continue to move through this conversation with respect to our county, and certainly, as you know, if not 98% of Atlanta sits in Fulton County. We want to really be transparent. That's how we got here. My goal is always to be transparent about where we are and where we could be. Atlanta really has an opportunity to really have an impact on public safety for years to come. Improving jail conditions and the partnership therein with respect to Fulton County. And just for the listening public, we understand, I need to understand, there are 15 different cities inside Fulton County. And as we get ready to move forward, if we move to the next slide, please. We need to have what I term as a situational analysis. I think it's fair for people to understand at least where we are. And as we get ready to take a deeper dive, understanding that Fulton County Jail itself was built 32 years ago. And right now our population is a little over 2,900, right at 2,942. We have the capacity to house 2,500 individuals, and certainly with a few other spaces, 2591 is the total. Right now, we have a little over 234 people that are sleeping on what we call boats. And so one of the things that we have done both prior to me taking office as a sheriff's office, and now we continue to work with both the Solicitor General as well as our DA, our new DA, in determining what those numbers look like with respect to individuals that are currently in a position, and this is kind of a sidebar. Right now we have 730 individuals that have been in custody, have had at least one first appearance, have been in custody longer than 365 days. And so while the system, due to COVID and other, even pre-COVID, while the system itself is, I won't say flawed, it has its opportunities, we need to clearly understand that having and working a solution surrounding the lease or the purchase of ACDC will not only help create a pressure release valve, it will allow us to move into a space where we can treat people more humanely. We can attack COVID and this whack-a-mole system of COVID. We can attack it a little more aggressively. And so right now we need to understand that while the city ACDC is only not too many more years older than the actual Fulton County 901 Rice Street facility, you have to understand the differences in how oversight is completed. So we can go to the next slide, please. We at the city, we operated with what's called direct supervision. At the county, we use linear supervision. And now the major difference between both is quite simply indirect supervision. Down at ACDC, there are 22 housing units. Each housing unit would have, in this scenario, at least one officer, if not more, in maximum security, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and weekends and holidays included. So that said, with respect to overcrowding, we could certainly, and this is the unique position we find ourselves in, and please let me be clear, I absolutely applaud the mayor for wanting to create a center of equity. Many of those programs that I've heard through the process, and yes, people will say I was part of the task force. I was absolutely part of the task force for ACDC, and I attended every meeting. And so, again, me being transparent, that it was a task force, much like the ICE task force, that was imbalanced from its start. And so when you control an environment like that, you can control the outcome. And so in this instance, I have said quite openly and honestly, in the meantime, there are two things that we need to make note of. Gateway, and let me tell you why I give you my resume. So I started with the city in 1988, and for 30 years, this discussion has taken place. And so to that extent, I've had an opportunity to talk to Mayor Franklin and understand her thought process and how that was her decision to put together a program. Then was that the encouragement was to let the next mayor take over the process. By 2010, I was chief and intimately involved in the conversation with respect to the evaluation of the jail, how well the city's finance office at the time put together the evaluation. And so while the number did more than double, it was not acceptable to the county at the time. And I am uniquely positioned to continue to have this conversation because even under Mayor Bottom's administration, I was in those meetings with the county. Now that I sit on the opposite side of the table, we still should continue to have this conversation. I clearly understand the commitment that the mayor wants to and the administration wants to get out of the jail business in some shape, form, or fashion. I am just absolutely adamant that we, the Fulton County administration, the sheriff's office, and certainly county government would be better clients, better serve our communities holistically with being able to do some of the same programs, meaning with the PAT 3 program, preparing adult offenders to transition to training and therapy, by the way, was started pre this administration for the city. It was in full force prior to that, and it was part of the City of Atlanta Department of Corrections administrative look at what reform looks like. It is something that we will continue with the same name as the city. And so it was probably the most successful program in the country with respect to reentry. And so that puts us in a place that we can tout that as a combined City of Atlanta, Fulton County. We can not just tout it, we can grow it beyond immeasurable opportunities by the county having or leasing or creating this purchase opportunity. We could then include such goals as having a women's entrepreneurial center, right? So there are programmatic opportunities, including mental health, that will help close the gap on what new criminal justice reform should look like. With that even being said, we also have to keep in mind, under Mayor Franklin, some of the things that we're trying to do today should be occurring at the Gateway Center. The Gateway Center was designed to do some of the programmatic training in those spaces. And so I would submit to you, as we get ready to continue with the slides, I will tell you, when you talk about both the facilities being similar in age, the fact that we built, and this was in 88, and occupied in 95, the City of Atlanta Detention Center, it was one of the most cutting-edge detention facilities in the country. Again, I've already spoken to direct supervision and how it is a more humane environment to hold those that have been accused of a crime. So with that, and let me be perfectly honest, when as a young officer, I thought it was not the appropriate way to go. You know, I came from an older jail, which again, as I mentioned, is now Gateway, and could not be more pleased with the results from direct supervision, the way that we can maintain a facility, and the way that we can provide additional services. So both detention centers as a whole are in need of capital improvement, but we did a better job over the last 10 years. As I continue to peel the onion back here at the county, we did a better job of making sure we looked beyond where we were and created a preventive maintenance program to make sure that that facility is absolutely capable of holding every individual that we have. And when I say every, the charges don't matter. It is a facility built to house anyone from maximum security to those misdemeanors where we also deal with cash bonds. That'll be later on from that perspective. Next slide, please. As we get ready to talk to one of the most pressing issues of the day, we talk about COVID and some of the protocols. We've had an opportunity to not just engaged with CDC, but we've engaged with Emory Hospital and some of their facilities that are born out of the college itself and what best practices are and what that looks like as we get ready to continue to move. One of the things that we talk about with ACDC is it's quite simply built as an opportunity for us to have additional space. Now, I clearly understand, and I applaud the mayor, as I said earlier, and I know she is resolute in her position, but I would also maintain, as I did in a meeting earlier with our new COO, and congratulations again, John, that unless we're going to blow this building up tomorrow, we have an opportunity to house safely and secure and create a COVID-friendly environment that we better take care, that we have a better opportunity to take care of those in our population that have COVID, and the space would allow us really less restrictive lockdowns, just simply the way that the actual ACDC is situated. And then the other thing that we have to keep in mind, and this is just a public comment with respect to how we treat the least of these. And so when we're in a space and an environment where 2 or 3 years ago we talked about ICE inmates and we talked about how they were being housed by the previous presidential administration. And these are things that, yes, I don't keep quiet. These are things that I have said as part of the administration with the city, and I continue to say now. And that is, if the mayor wanted to end, and I got it, the contract with ICE. She did that, but I also advise that if we did that, the young men and women that we house safely and securely would not receive the same type of treatment if they were shipped off to Irwin County, if they were shipped off to Stewart. And quite prophetically, I not only made that comment, you see right now in the news where either Irwin or Stewart's being sued because they are forcing young ladies to have a hysterectomy. So they are being sued repeatedly, and we just have to figure out how we need to move forward and treat people better. And so that's what this becomes. This becomes an opportunity when we start talking about COVID, how we can quarantine, how we can do a better job there. So it is quite simply, as we move forward, one of the best practices with respect to space. Right now, if you go to the next slide for me, you'll see just from a Fulton County situational analysis piece, you'll see quite simply, we're operating right at 110, 113% of the capacity. Since COVID and since March, we've had 333 detainees and 84 staff members test positive. Now, that doesn't mean that they're active. We've been very proactive about how we take care about both our employees and both those that have come down with the mild symptoms, as it were. So of that 333, of those detainees, 6 have been hospitalized, none have died, and all of this is since March of 2020. The other thing it bears pointing out is currently the Fulton County Jail is not ACA accredited, meaning it's not the American Correctional Association has its accreditation. One of the things that we prided ourselves on at ACDC was not just obtaining a perfect score of 100 over 100 for the accreditation yearly period. We maintained that for absolutely 10 years. The other thing that, again, another opportunity. So this is where we may agree to disagree, but whether it be the mayor or the administration, I think the focus should be on where we agree. And so when you start talking about programmatic changes, and we made this offer when I was still the chief, And so now we have a little more, as a sheriff, I have a little more sway or influence as to the programmatic opportunities. And one of the things is we have an entire unit now currently dedicated to what's called Youthful Offenders, right? That's 17. You haven't quite made it to 18. Those individuals need to be housed sight and sound differently than the rest of the population, the rest of the 2,900 folks that we serve. That said, to be able to move them to ACDC and really start and create meaningful programmatic changes where some of these individuals end up back in our community with at least entering into a program. Like, for instance, with the PAT 3 program. Right now, the PAT 3 program, again, the preparing adult offenders to transition through training and therapy, was, again, as I mentioned, the number one program in the country. It allowed individuals to note, right, 80% of the individuals coming back out of, or returning citizens, if you will, from the state penitentiary system and DOC, State Department of Corrections, come back to the Atlanta metro area. And so if we can have an impact on the front end, a lot of the things, interestingly, as you look through this, a lot of the programmatic opportunities are the same. So you look at where our females are housed, and that's the South Annex down in Union City. And so there's an opportunity for us to create an immediate entrepreneurial program for young ladies, but it needs to be in an environment where we can have a more controlled, smaller group environment setting. And so that's something else we can do with ACDC. Next slide, please. The other thing that we need to really, again, being completely transparent, is we look at where we came from in '88. I started, and everyone, so this is the piece that we miss, right? Everyone that was arrested in the city came through the City of Atlanta Department of Corrections. Didn't matter what you were charged with. Rape, robbery, lay and drag, disorderly conduct, at the time being in a known drug area, right? And so some of those ordinances have been stricken from the books, but we have an opportunity in this setting to continue to do city function. So one of the things I stressed before retirement with the city was an opportunity for, and we'll talk about it as we continue to go through, an opportunity for the Fulton County Sheriff's Office to continue to do city function, including the cash bail reform piece, and allow the city to completely get out of the jail business. So where, and I've been watching the council meetings, so where there has been some movement of where the Department of Corrections funding has landed, there's the potential to save anywhere from $18 to $20 million. And so as you look at our current situational analysis, you can look from 2017 all the way to 20. You look at the substantial drop in population. And even today, you look at the average daily population since the beginning of the year, and we're at 25 people. That means that there's 1,314 beds over there. And so this facility in and of itself was built to be a detention facility. Next slide, please. As we continue with the conversation around the situational analysis, one of the things you cannot leave out of the conversation is, and I believe you all had a great presentation done by Chief Judge Porter, and one of the things that continue to plague not just the city holistically with COVID, it's across the country, but with the implementation of cash bail reform in municipal courts, the FTAs, the failure to appear, have increased over 230%. And that's just from 15 to 19 holistically. And yeah, there are certain charges that the city will automatically, or certain traffic charges, for instance, that serve as state charges, right? Some of them require real jail time. And so the notion in many instances that it is popular to strike down city ordinances, it in my opinion, is absolutely the wrong direction to head. We have to understand, while it is not the county's responsibility to accept city ordinances, right? It is something that we could create a memorandum of understanding to do. One of the opportunities here is to fix the flaw in the actual system, and this is something that we fought for both as some of the older members on council, the more seasoned people on council at the time of cash bail reform. It was pushed through very rapidly, and one of the absolute flaw is there is unless it's changed, there is language in the cash bail reform piece that dictates that if anyone has an open case, meaning you're already out on a cash bail bond, in those cases, if that case has not been adjudicated, you will not be granted an additional bond. So that is a flaw to my knowledge that still exists between the lack of communication, technological communication between the jail management system and the court system. I won't submit to you that the 230% increase would be cut in half, but I will tell you that it will have a need, if done properly, to house more than 20 or 30 people at the city level from there. Again, as I mentioned, we go to the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, the City of Atlanta Detention Center was built in 1995, otherwise in good condition. I do know, again, I'm at the table asking that if the city wants to get out of the jail business, let us, the county, be the preferred choice to run the facility. And yes, keep in mind, I know there's some people that say that there is a scare or an opportunity that if we were to lease the space, that the thought process being that someone would potentially sue and we'd never get the space back. The precedent has already been set. We've housed both federal inmates and Fulton County inmates in the past, so the precedent has already been set with that nature. And then also, let me be completely transparent. If we were to get ACDC, the county were to work out a plan and the city to work through a plan to get ACDC tomorrow or have it yesterday, that will not solve ultimately the county's need for additional space and the need to build a new facility. And so to that end, I've had extensive talks with both the county manager, Dick Anderson, as well as the chair, and many of Chair Rob Pitts and many of the county commissioners who I've begun to give tours to. So let me first take a second to stop and to commend those city council members, starting with Dustin Hillard and Matt Westmoreland and Jennifer Ide, Councilmember Ide, and Council President Moore, for taking the opportunity to come over and really continue the conversation, at least take a look at what we're doing. I understand that many of you had an opportunity to, and let me thank those that plan to come on the next tour, because being transparent is the only way we get through this. And so to that end, as I mentioned, direct supervision is the way to go in the future, hopefully with the collaboration between the city and the county. We could figure out how to build a more robust $400 to $500 million facility. And so even in that space, next slide, please. We could really create what opportunities look like. And so as we begin to talk about opportunities, let me be a little more direct. Alleviating overcrowding is absolutely a must. We talked about direct supervision. We talked about the youthful offenders as well as the female detainees and as well as the PAT 3 program. So those are opportunities that we could continue to serve at a much larger scale, not just the city of Atlanta, but we can serve Fulton County as a whole. And then let's talk about the wraparound services. We talk about wraparound services in an environment that would allow us to not spend $100 million, right, whether it be federally funded or not. We would actually, if the sale were to be agreed upon, we could put as much as, again, remember I said we've taken off the liability, we would hire everyone at ACDC. Anyone that is in good standing, we would be able to take that liability in terms of the dollar figure, close to $18-20 million off of the books. We could in turn make sure that we have additional space, but more importantly, we'll be able to do some of the same wraparound services that have been talked about even at the task force level, right? And so right now there are somewhere, next slide please, there are somewhere around 120, 150 vacancies that we have at the county level, and we could absorb even additional staff from that perspective. So the one thing that Chairman Fitz and Vice Chair Natalie Hall and I have discussed separately, let me be clear, as well as our county manager, is that this potential to have a release valve really creates a sound of public safety conversation. And so as we continue to focus on those, next slide, please, we have to really be thoughtful about, the city, as I mentioned, the city of Atlanta, citizens of Fulton County, and whether it be perceived or real, their taxpayer dollars at risk here. And so while we will certainly be going out to the market to figure out how to get $400 to $500 million, the other thing we have to keep in mind is what we really want to do in this environment is not create an environment where we are double taxing both city and county taxpayers. And so, next slide, please. So, as we continue to move forward, one of the things that we have to also look at as we look holistically at this is the potential risk, right? What do we talk about when we talk about risk? Individuals that who would ordinarily be charged with offenses where a person would be housed or serviced at the city level now face the potential of state charges. And so while there are pundits out there that would say, police officers would do that, we are not in a space where somebody would upgrade the charge. Well, it's not an upgrade. There are charges that can equally be assessed or a person can be charged with where they will go to the county jail. And so let me give you an example. Just a couple of weeks ago, when the protesters took over the highway, and they would normally go to, in this case, normally go to ACDC, well, this set of protesters came to Fulton County. And if it's something that you want to put in place where I've heard parents over my years say, we want to teach somebody a lesson, or we want to teach a child, or we want to, look, Fulton County is not the place to teach people lessons. It is, and to see some of the very same people a year and a half ago that were protesting and in the street, to see the look on their face and understand where they were with respect to coming to the county versus going to the city, it is a stark difference. And so now, as again, being completely transparent, Chief Judge Edline has amended one of the previous orders before she became Chief Judge for certain nonviolent offenses, especially during this emergency time, to temporarily be released for misdemeanors at the county level. So again, being able to service similar charges at a difficult time to help keep control over population as best we can. So I thank Judge Edline and her commitment to lean in. But the difference here is where there have been some flaws in the previous order, she stepped in along with advice from our very capable and I think doing a great job, Keith Gamage, our Solicitor General, and really been able to focus on a similar cash bond relief process. So we're doing that at the county level as well. That would translate from that perspective, but it would allow us also to really look at what opportunities go beyond that. And having been over here, for instance, I've had an opportunity to work directly with Chief Bryant and his team and really be focused on some of the systemic charges that, or not just charges, but some of those that have continued, next slide please, that have continued to work against criminal justice reform, individuals that have been arrested upwards of 60 or 70 times where they have been in and out the city jail to no avail of getting them off the street. And what I mean by that is specifically 3 weeks ago, we had an individual that a city judge found incompetent, but they dismissed the charges. And so that person went right back out, assaulted a young lady in the middle of downtown, ended up in our facility, and we're actually able, because of our communication, to provide additional services, provide additional information, and so hence we as a county, as a city, become better for it. But then the other piece, next slide please, really as we continue to look past where we are, we have to keep in mind that the criminal justice system, the court system as a whole, hasn't ground to a halt. But we also have to understand there are over 25,000 pretrial inmates across the state that are faced with some of the same issues. And so, as I mentioned, the 730 individuals that haven't been to court inside 365 days, that in and of itself causes and suggests a need for us to do more than we're doing right now. The other piece is, with Fulton County, in lockstep with APD, we've been able to really start combating crime at a different level, and a level that we hadn't seen in quite some time. And so I do applaud APD and as well as Chief Bryant for the job that they've been doing, he and his team been doing. But we also have to keep in mind, just as this past Valentine's Day weekend, we wanted to make sure that we focus on more than the 1,200 warrants we had. And so because of those joint efforts, we were able to get more than 15 really high crime or high intensity charges off the street, those that have warrants from everything from murder to aggravated assault. So those are the kinds of things that we want to continue to be able to do. But again, increased arrest means increased overcrowding from that perspective. From that perspective. So the other thing, next slide, please. When we talk about potential risk, and look, I'm from here, born and raised. I campaigned for the last 2 years to become the 28th sheriff of Fulton County. And the one thing that cannot be denied, whether it is because the city is wide open or not, the one thing that cannot be denied is that, this ordinance modification or the conversation therein lies the perception that Atlanta is, perceived as a misdemeanor-free zone for crimes that turn into dangerous crimes, and in this case creates, in some cases, irresponsible governance. We have to be very thoughtful about what leads to what I call next, right? You move from breaking into cars into slider crime, from slider crime into carjacking. So we have to create an environment where we have both been innovative about our approach to wraparound services, and we want to make sure that our, especially as sheriff, I want to make sure our citizens understand how responsive we will be as opposed to being non-responsive. And then the other piece that has really impacted all of us is the opportunity for us to do a better job when it comes to creating a really laser-focused mental health unit. Right now, the city jail is more equipped to create an environment where we treat people more like humans and introduce the therapeutic needs for many of our citizens. Right now, I have 85 individuals that, and many of you know this, you've heard this, it has become a soundbite for many, but as state of Georgia over the past years, 10 to 15 years, closed down mental health services, the jails, and specifically Fulton County, the Fulton County Jail has become one of the largest, if not the largest, mental health providers in the state. Right now, I have 85 individuals that are at different programs throughout the state, simply trying to make sure that they are competent to stand trial. I have 2 inmates incarcerated that have been incarcerated since 2015 because they did, unfortunately, for the families, they did shoot and kill a police officer. But the court, in and of itself, making sure that we service people better, and this is an opportunity when it comes to mental health, want to make sure that these individuals are competent to stand trial. So where are we as we get final slide before we get to questions, right? Where are we? I believe, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak, I believe that somewhere in the midst of true reform, we can find an opportunity to really move forward on the things we agree on. There is space for not negotiation, but there's space for collaboration. And the one thing that I have, again, had the conversation to talk at the county level with is the county is strong. The county is strong. The funding is there. This is the first time we're able to have a real conversation that won't lead us down the road of not doing the right thing at the right time. Our decisions right now can impact us for years to come. And so as we move out of COVID, as people continue to enjoy Atlanta, the greatest city in the world, again, I can say that because I'm from here, we have to be thoughtful about a much larger area, and that is the Fulton County, Atlanta metro area. And so goes Atlanta, so goes the opportunity, both north and south, for us to do a better job than what we've been doing. And so I will certainly thank you, Madam Chair, and those that are listening. If there are any specific questions, I'd love to take those questions. I will tell you that we do have a set of stats in front of us, so if there's some specifics that we can get to you, anyone in the council members that you need, please feel free. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. And if there are any questions or any specifics you want me to reiterate, I will absolutely love to be able to do that.
Questions, if you have questions, please go ahead and through our group text, let me know. I see Mr. Westmoreland has already put his name in the queue. Mr. Westmoreland.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Sheriff Labatt and Solicitor Gamage and District Attorney Willis for joining us today. Could you, I think I wrote my questions down in chronological order. Back on slide, it's slide number, it's listed as number 2, the detainee population of 2942. Can you walk us through, to the extent you can, under what charges those 2,900 folks are currently being held, and is, detailed as you can get, but ideally maybe starting with violent versus nonviolent, or the most common charges that folks are currently being held under? You might be on mute.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you, council members, and thank you for taking the time to come visit us. And so let's start here, right? I think it's a good place to start. We have, and this is certainly public records, of the 2942 that I asked the team to pull the top 10 charges, and hopefully that will give you an indication. So 12%, 373 individuals are charged with aggravated assault. There are some drug possession charges that are more than, I guess that's what it put it, more than simple possession. There are 243 charges, individuals charged there. Theft in and of itself on the surface, 233 individuals there. Possession of a firearm, another 231 individuals. Battery, 211. We have 203 people charged with murder. Armed robbery, 125. Aggravated sex crimes, 86. Burglary, we have 82 individuals. Cruelty to children, 47. So I've asked that those, we will continue to track those through the court system, but just to make sure you knew what the top 9 or 10 charges are from that perspective. And then here's another telling fact, right? Right now, 41%, almost 45% of the arrests, specifically 1,195 individuals have been arrested by the Atlanta Police Department. So those charges lie in wait to be, arraigned and charged and adjudicated. But 41% of our population comes directly from the Atlanta Police Department. Let's see. Is there anything else? So here's another telling sign for you, or anyone that's interested. So pre-COVID, we had an unindicted case load of 3%. Post-COVID, that has jumped to 44%. And so you can see there are longer stays in jail, and those are the things that provide opportunity for us to continue to move forward from there.
So I appreciate those stats, and that kind of segues into my next question, which might either be for you or for the district attorney. When you mentioned earlier the 700 plus cases, or the 700 plus individuals who have been awaiting their next day in court for more than 365 days, I know that both of you have been on the job for less than 50 days. But based on new leadership at the county and what we think may happen as it relates to COVID over the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, what are you all's thoughts on what that 700 plus number will look like, 6 months from now? And will we see a return to an unindicted caseload around 3%? Because 44 sounds insane, honestly.
Yeah. So, and that's a great question. So part of the concern is, and we've been having these conversations constantly, both Madam DA and as well as the Solicitor General, is how do we and what can we do to, one, release anyone that's nonviolent ahead of time? What does that look like? Part of the conversation surrounding that becomes, I would submit to you, now I'm not a judge, but I would submit to you that of those 730 individuals, many of them wouldn't have received jail time longer than a year anyway. And so there's an opportunity for us to, pull back the curtain on that. And so we're working to get that done as well, pretty feverishly from that perspective. I don't know, to answer your question directly, I don't know from the unindicted caseload how quickly we'll be able to get back to 3%, given that the court processes have the wheels of justice in this case have been moving slow. But I do applaud our new DA, Fonnie Willis, and we've had really thorough conversations about she's going to set up 2 grand juries as we get ready to start. She's working with Chief Judge Brasher to make sure whatever we can do to continue to be laser focused on processing people and I don't want to sound mechanical, but making sure the system works holistically is what we're laser focused on doing. So I'd love to get back to 3%, but we also don't know what COVID looks like over the next couple of months. Now, speaking of COVID, I will tell you, and you didn't ask this, Councilman, but I think it's important to note that we are the only jail in the Southeast right now at Fulton County that has a rapid testing machine, and we have new and innovative opportunities in these partnerships with the CDC to obtain even the more, I guess the best way to put it, more rapid test than the original 15-minute test. And then the other thing that we are doing ahead of the curve, if you will, is looking at, we have 34, 35 individuals that are 65 years. Of all those numbers, we only have 34, 35 individuals that are older than 65. So where they qualify for the vaccine, we are going through to see, one, if they want to take it, and then we are preparing according to the governor's plan with respect to the vaccine dissemination or people being able to obtain the vaccine. Somewhere in that 1B area is the conversation around detainees. And so and it would be a great help for us, those that will take the vaccine or willing to take the vaccine, will be able to provide that and then hopefully slow the spread internally. And so again, we've been doing a good job managing the spread, but it takes a lot of quarantining and creating that environment from there. All right. Appreciate that. I hope
yeah, no, was Madam DA, since you're here, I appreciate you coming.
Mr. Westmoreland, this is Councilmember Shepard. Unfortunately, Madam DA was not able to. She got caught up into something else, and she says her regret, so she's not here. I'm sorry.
Good deal. No, that's okay. That is fine. Toward the end of your presentation, you talked a little bit about the county's need for a new facility independent of the conversation around our building. I was wondering if you could expand a little on that in terms of whatever's on your mind. And then my follow-up question is, when you reference the $18 to $20 million absorption that could be possible of what is essentially our corrections budget, it's my understanding, and I've always kind of been perplexed by the fact that the county's budget runs on a calendar year. And so I know they adopted a budget in December or January, I guess, for the next 12 months. And so I'm curious as to how that plays into the $18 to $20 million figure.
Yeah, so thank you again. And you're right. We just ratified our budget. I won't say we, because I'm the recipient of some pretty great county commissioners approving and ratifying the budget in a timely manner. But that being said, the $18 million I was referring to, if you recall, when I left, corrections budget had been reduced from $30 million to almost 15 or somewhere near $18 million. And then it is my understanding that the funding for the human resources piece of it was moved to constituent services, somewhere around $15 million, and the current operating budget at ACDC somewhere to the tune of $3 million. So we would absorb all of that. So we'd be able to. We already have staffing and funding for staffing we have, and much to the thanks of the Board of Commissioners, we have an opportunity to add 28 deputies to what we do on a daily basis. So that would bring my vacancy rate higher, but more importantly, we can think through this process so that those individuals that have, and I proposed this before I retired, just in terms of the foundation for making sure we take care of our employees, and that was we could, in fact, those that are on a new pension plan could come over to the county. Those that are ready to retire with the city after serving honorably for 26, 27, almost 30 years could stay in that, with the city and maybe another opportunity, another job from there that will allow them to retire and go from there. So that is the $18 million that I was referring to. Plus, then you get to add whatever the cost of the facility if it was a purchase, right? You get to add that back to the city coffers, whether it is $20 or $30 million. I had made mention I do have a plan that includes paying the city, doing city services, right? We would take care of court, the sheriff's office would take possession of the building, take care of court as is, take care of any transportation as is. As you know, Grady Hospital doesn't cost either one of us to take care of those that are in custody. So that wouldn't be a cost from that perspective. But then we as a county could pay, well, in this format, the city would pay the county for doing those services, and I'm just using easy money, would pay the easy numbers. The city would pay roughly $5 million a year. We would as the county would return that $5 million as payment on the building. And then once the price has been negotiated, then it would be over 4 years, over 5 years, whatever that looks like. It creates a win-win for both the city as well as the county holistically.
Okay, so to close the absent of any building leasing or purchasing costs, there is currently in the budget that just got adopted, either unallocated or allocated to vacancies, the full $20 million that we are currently indirectly spending on corrections. Well, let me answer this way. I have been reassured by both the county manager, both the county CFO, as well as the chairman. Should that be a negotiated price, we are in good footing and again, I'm not an expert on the finance side. We are on good footing to actually pay $20 or $30 million. I don't know what that negotiated price would be, but it certainly would not be near the number under a previous administration of $80 million. I do want to take an opportunity to answer your question with respect to a new jail. Regardless to what we do, we need a new facility. We need to plan for the future. Right now, the one thing that I think we all hear from the public is that, yeah, we can put numbers on the paper and say crime is going down, but if you're the victim of crime, crime just went up 100%. And so the perception as I travel from south to north and back is that we need help fighting crime. We need help really suppressing crime is the best way to put it. And so I've asked a lot of my criminals, if you will, Councilman, to stop committing crimes. That didn't work too well. So I foresee that we will continue to project. Those numbers will continue to go up. Just since January, when I took over, we were somewhere around 2,700 inmates in both facilities, and we are currently again at 2,942. And as you watch the trends, they're not misdemeanors that are holding that trend at a steady level. There are crimes that
And this doesn't include the juvenile numbers, too. That is the most discouraging part for me, is that there's an opportunity, and we need to create a level of crime interruption, both between all of our police departments and the sheriff's office. And I think we're doing a really good job. We're off to a great start. And so, but to answer your question directly, we need a new county facility yesterday.
Appreciate it. Madam Chair, I know that you've got 3 other folks in line, so I will stop there at some point. I don't know whether you're going to or not, but I'd be curious to hear our administration's thoughts on today's presentation. But that is all for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Westmoreland. Next, we have Mr. Bond. And after Mr. Bond, Ms. Moore, and then Mr. Massacott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sheriff Labatt. And thank you for the solicitor being on standby to make a presentation today. I'm concerned about this issue, as everyone knows. But I also want to like for you to expound on something that you mentioned. I thought, like everyone else, thought that it was extremely noble of the mayor to take a position on ICE in sympathy with our Latina ex-brothers and sisters who are interned at the border, but releasing those inmates to facilities in Georgia that are not nationally accredited, as our Department of Corrections was, and very well managed, has resulted in Nazi-like tragedies for the women that were in our facility. And I'd like for you to also expound on what the relocation of those individuals has also meant to families coming to visit or seeking to support their family member who might have been in our facility in the way of access through whether it's Amtrak, MARTA, the highway system. How do those things impact families?
First of all, thank you, Councilmember Bond. As always, I was waiting on you to tell everybody that you saved my life at ACDC when you used to work there, as you normally have. And I appreciate all the support from that moment forward. But directly to your question, one of the things that I was able to do, and I appreciate being on the ICE task force. I appreciate the mayor's edict that she was not going to be complicit with President Trump. Well, in fact, the individuals that we were holding were not coming from the border, period. Those individuals, and I'm very clear, she brought in a lot of experts, and to this day, we can agree to disagree. One of the things that we did, contrary to the report that was put out and staged by ICE and several other entities, not ICE, the actual Immigration Customs Enforcement team, but those that opposed that, was that ACDC was not doing a good job. Well, in fact, we were doing the opposite. We allowed team members from ICE to have an office internally so that we could better process and help get those that remained internally to the city out. And we provided resources. We provided everything from deportation, video court before it was even popular, before COVID. So we were in a space that we provided a service and were very intentional about that. And I forewarned those in the meeting that to go 3 or 4 hours away from the city would have a larger impact on those families, as whether they come visit, whether they just need to come down and pick up anything as simple as the cash that one of the persons had on them that could help feed the family for the rest of the week. Access was primary, and much like everything else in Atlanta, Atlanta is the hub of travel, the hub of interaction, and my contention in each one of those meetings. And again, as I've learned from many of you, being a public servant is not always popular. Sometimes it is, you have to stand on what the right thing to do is. And so I was heartbroken to find down in Irwin and other facilities in Ocilla, Georgia, that they were not being treated. The individuals, some of the same individuals that we had developed relationships with, were not being treated accordingly. And then subsequently, again, I won't say that directly were the detainees that we were holding. We absolutely were not. And even now at the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, we absolutely will not be a 287G program participant. And so for ones that don't know what that is, quite simply, it's where ICE comes in and they really, for lack of better words, they deputize or they officially make my deputies and detention officers an active part of their team, so that if anyone is merely suspected, or even to the point that that acting on the ICE's behalf, they would see if a person needed to be deported or if a person was wanted, etc. We don't do that. We didn't do it then. We won't do it now. I said that loud and clear then, but it was absolutely heartbreaking for me to find out that there are women of all ages that were subject to not expert care, but more importantly, selective care, where numbers of those young ladies were forced to have hysterectomy. And so they are going through their own lawsuit there, so I'll leave it at that. But access is what kept us, at least in our own communities, kept us where we needed to be with respect to how we treat people. Care, custody, and control. And so we are trying to mirror that, and we're putting, thanks to the leadership in Atlanta, and thanks to the things that I've heard across the county as I ran and subsequently have become the 28th sheriff, we're putting customer service first. And it does not matter whether it's internal or external. So thank you for an opportunity to expound upon that, and I hope that answers the question. And if anybody else has anything else, I'll certainly answer that.
Well, I just have a follow-up on a slightly different subject, back to the facility, and thank you for your answer, because during the time that there was the re-envisioned jail commission was going on, our department and our employees were, there's no other word for it, they were slandered. And, you can't be a nationally accredited facility and commit atrocities. So I just wanted that to be clear. And it does matter who is managing and how facilities are managed. But to the facility, I know you've got some of your women detainees down in Union City, as was mentioned. If you were able to get the key to ACDC tonight, what would you do with it? Who would be there, and how easy would it be, or not, to assume the responsibilities for its operation from a county perspective? How quickly could you get up and running?
And another great question. I would say inside 30 days, we could not only assume the building, and that's doing our due diligence, right? Understanding what has changed since I left, making sure that we could continue to do city functions, making sure from an HR perspective that whether it be policies, whether it be making sure that our staff, it's important for us to understand that none of this works without, and you know this, Councilman, none of this works without our teams, and both teams merging together, I think, would be more than dynamic. With the young ladies, the ladies out at South Fulton, we could begin. Some of these projects I am pushing forward with anyway. Our women's entrepreneurial center and training center, we will find a way, or we will make one. We've ordered everything from embroidery machines to continued training. We're getting ready, but see, at the same time, then that cuts costs for the sheriff's office or any of the entities there on some of the services we can provide. The reimagining or really reviving the PAT 3 program is one that can be expanded now beyond the city limits into the county. I heard a story the other day that talked about the watershed management department and as well as public works needing additional employees, right? COVID is running rampant through all of our governmental entities, but we had a viable work source and one that we could continue to move forward, continue to build. So that's there. The youthful offenders, we could extend that beyond where we are now, especially with the space, right? Most of us will admit, I don't know if some of us, I'll admit that when I was that age, I had a lot of energy, right? And to be in a, 5x10 cell, there are opportunities for us to create this inmate interruption or this, we do need to get ahead of the game. Let me be clear with respect to interrupting the school to prison pipeline, but the opportunity for us to level set, hit reset, and potentially in some of these cases give young women and men an opportunity to kind of re-engage in life. Right? I had an opportunity just 2 days ago to go out to the women's facility and really sit and have those conversations, right? What ACDC affords us is access and services that we can really pull together pretty quickly. And so, and maintain the integrity of the city municipal system with what we have. And so the opportunity is there. As you remember, we used to bind cases over. Every case came through the city, and the judges would bind cases over, and we did our due diligence in making sure that those things, before people went to the county on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 50 to 100 at a time, we made sure that we did our due diligence there. So we stand ready, Councilmember Bond. We could do this in no later than 30 days. I think, honestly, that's more doable than the finance part of it, because good government sometimes gets in the way. But excited people and excited entities between us and the City of Atlanta Department of Corrections, we could do this pretty expeditiously.
Well, I thank you for that answer. Just one more question. The Department of Corrections, under your leadership, did much more than monitor and maintain the facility and monitor inmates. There was a lot of extracurricular city performance that you all demonstrated. Would you be in a position, assuming the facility and duties, to pick back up on some of those activities? Like, I know that you all did a lot of cleaning and closing of vacant buildings, cleaning lots, provided meals for seniors at community centers, all around the city. Is that something, if this ever happens, that you'd be responsibilities that you'd be willing to reenact or assume again? Because really, since you left, the condition in some of our neighborhoods and our streets and communities, without your efforts, it looks terrible. You have to be frank about it.
Well, Councilman Barton, it breaks my heart to see some of the hard work that not just the men and women of ACDC did and took pride in, but those in our care that took pride in removing graffiti, removing debris, in some of these same spaces. We went to place after place, street after street, and created an environment where those that, whether it be litter or graffiti, understood that this is our city. In an opportunity to put people that were convicted or did some of that back into those spaces, and the learning opportunities there for them to take pride in cleaning those spaces. The short answer is absolutely. We could all but, and minus COVID, right? Let me be clear. COVID has presented some new challenges for us, but that is something both at a county level that I plan on doing now, but we could do that in a more robust fashion given the opportunity, and it blends right into, in many instances, it blends right into the PAT 3 program. And so I'd be more than overjoyed, excited to make that happen. And certainly, and what you're getting at, and one of the things that gave me pride individually, but the pride for our DLC holistically, was the ability to serve, and then to serve beyond the walls of the jail, and to go out to our community, feed our most valuable commodity, our seniors on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, something that Councilmember Boone started while she was in constituent services, something we were able to mimic and continue those types of programs, and the vision of the leaders in our community for us to be able to help and really, I mean, it changed what we did for a certain time. And let me be clear, I plan on being the sheriff a long time. And so for us to re-energize those types of programs will help not just the city of Atlanta, it will help East Point, College Park, the folks over on Old National, the folks in Sandy Springs, those that need services. We can augment those services, and I can't wait to get started, to be honest.
Well, thank you for that response, and I can't wait to help to do whatever I can to make this a reality. I think I'll make this statement, Madam Chair, and I'll release. I'm old school. I come from a school of politics and public service where government should work cooperatively together. Atlanta, 90% of Atlanta is within Fulton County. At any given moment, almost 50 to 60% of the cases that go to Fulton County originate out of Atlanta. The sheriff, I believe, is already aiding our police department in enforcement in certain areas of North Atlanta. I'm sure we'll expand to other parts. I just think it's time to do what's best for Atlanta and what's best for Fulton County, and cooperatively try to achieve these goals, for the benefit of all of our citizens. I think that we are really missing, we would be really missing an opportunity if we don't work out this situation to our mutual benefit. It's admirable to speak up for our Latina and Hispanic brothers and sisters who were suffering down on the border. But we shouldn't cast our vision so high that we look past the African Americans that are a mile and a half away at Wright Street that need relief. We just should not do that. We have the ability to help. We should help. Sheriff, thank you for your presentation and your leadership. And I'm done, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Next, we have President Moore.
Yes, thank you. And please forgive me if I ask to repeat something. I've been on and off. But first I want to start with, I something Mr. Bond brought up, and I don't know if you had it in your presentation, and if not, if you could provide it for us, some numbers that tell us how many people are actually arrested by APD in Atlanta that are detained at your center, Sheriff, and just as a subset of that, the number that are from Atlanta, but more importantly, the overall number. And then some statistical information that would suggest how long, because this was another issue I had when I went to the tour, how long some of them are being held, because, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone that's in the Rice Street jail or that would be in ACDC at some point, but I'm just going to think of the Fulton County jail, they're all technically innocent because they haven't been proven guilty. They're not serving time. They're there waiting on trial. Am I correct?
So, yeah, so all of them, we have a pretrial program. We run a pretrial detention center as well. Many of them have been, those that have been adjudicated, for instance, we just pre-Christmas, we transported 63 detainees to state custody. Now we have an additional 45 detainees that will be transferred. The case has been adjudicated. And so everyone else, they are waiting. And if I may go back to your first question pretty quickly. So right now, 41% of the population of the 2,942, 41% come from APD arrest. And so that equates to 1,195 individuals. Specifically as to where they come from, I'd have to have someone run that information in terms of are they Atlanta proper or what that looks like.
And that's not as important, but, you know, what happens in the city. But I just was just curious.
And so, and to your point, in case I failed to mention, or when you visited, right now we have 730 individuals that have to go back to court that have been there over 365 days. And in most cases, once a person is their crime has been adjudicated, or the alleged crime, if they've been adjudicated, if it's less than 12 months, they'll still stay at Rice Street to serve that time. And if it's more than 12 months, again, we work with the state to get them transported to the state facility in Jackson.
Well, and I think that is another issue in terms of the length of time people are there. And I understand COVID is slowing down the courts. But I just have to start with, and I might have a couple other questions, just my general impressions, having had the opportunity to tour the Fulton County Jail and then again retour now more recently the Atlanta Detention Center. And I will just say that, and I know one of the commissioners went, and I saw her on the news. Anyone that actually has the opportunity to take that tour, and I know that you have done a lot of measures to try to mitigate some of the within your very short time as being sheriff. But it's just inhumane. It's just not a facility that humans should be housed. At this point, it seems to me that the building has reached its functional obsolescence. It's obsolete. It's not well maintained. The cramped quarters, to have to look at the people sleeping on the floor and having to share, you know, several of them sharing one commode where the cells, even if they did have a cell, they were with them. And then you go and you look at our detention center that the city has, and it's definitely a night and day scenario. And I don't know how we can't find some solution, even if it's a middle ground solution while there's some negotiation. I cannot leave without the impression still in my mind. And it hit me emotionally on some personal levels, and I won't go into all of that, but to see the conditions that people are living in, and particularly those that are innocent until they're proven guilty, having to be held and live in such close quarters. I'm not sure how you're managing. I know you all have been managing COVID, but I mean, just that alone is bad. And then, mental illness is not a crime, but, to house people who definitely need so I know you're providing supportive services, but probably supportive services in an environment that would help them with their mental illness versus exacerbated by the way that they have to live is another scenario. So I'm still listening. I know that you have said that you have reached out to the administration. I know that they are listening. And I would say that the mayor, her administrative staff, I know that our deputy chief operating officer was there, really need to look at the comparison in the facilities and see if there's anything we can work out. If not, while we're considering something long-term, short-term, to get people in a habitable environment. And, we're talking about whether it's black or brown or Latinx or anyone. All I saw were young black men and older black men. If there's anybody else of any other race in there, they probably were the half that had to stay in their cells while you do that. But it hit me in a particularly hard way, and I cannot get those images out of my mind. And if you go to both, you will see the stark difference, even from the facilities of the kitchen, and how that is out of order. I mean, you've got a lot of work to do from your record keeping standpoint. It's just a lot. And when you have a facility that's sitting there and it's open, it's empty, and then you have one that you have people sleeping on the floor and people walking over top of them while they're in these little things on the floor, it somehow it doesn't make sense that we can't find a way, either in the short term or in the long term, to work this out. So I'll leave it at that for now and continue to listen to the questions, and I may have some others later. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next we have Mr. Nascite, and then I'm going to follow him. And if anybody else has to speak, would like to have questions, please let me know.
Madam Chair, before Mr. Massakai, I did have a question. I forgot my other question. And this may be to the Gamage or someone who's more on that end, because we had this discussion briefly when we were at the City Detention Center, and I just want to be sure, when we're talking about if we did get rid of our jail, if we don't have somewhere to send them and they would find themselves then having to have state charges and go to the county jail, just what the difference would be, because what we discussed was, those that are charged on municipal charges that are held in municipal jail have a different level of charges that don't necessarily hurt people's records in the long run versus having a state charge that could follow them in previous employment and background checks. If anybody could speak to that, I would like it. Thank you. I'm sorry for re-interrupting.
Very confused.
Mr. Labat or Mr. General Gamage, would you like to speak? I'm not sure if they can answer her question at this point. Can you answer the question?
So I don't know if
Mr. Solicitor General Gamage is on. He is equipped to answer with respect to some of the programs he has.
I'm on mute.
You there, Mr. Gamage?
Oh, hello. Thank you. Madam City Council President, thank you for the question. This is Keith Gamage, Fulton County Solicitor General, and thanks to this body for having this conversation to improve communications between the county and the city. I want to make sure I fully, and thank you, Chief Labat, Sheriff Labat, for your leadership. I want to make sure I fully, Madam President, understand your question. Would you please mind asking it just once again, please?
Yes, so if someone is arrested on a charge, and some of our municipal codes are similar to state charges, and so it's really an officer's discretion whether they charge them as a municipal offense versus, I guess you could call a state offense, and that would determine where they would go, whether they would go to Fulton County Jail, whether they would go to the city jail. And what I was trying to determine that if we got rid of our city jail and thus not detain people, and or what I've also heard maybe eliminate our city code violations, what is the difference in terms of reporting, I want to say charges in terms of a person who would be charged on a state charge versus on a municipal charge? And how would that follow that person in terms of background checks, et cetera? So if it was a city charge, is there one level of scrutiny, or would it come up in background check, perhaps hurt their employment or whatever, versus if it's a state charge? Does that make sense now when I'm asking?
It does. It does, thank you for asking it again. In the city, you all have a great solicitor and team in Mr. Raines Carter, and I believe they do a great job. The distinction would lie, and that question is not very easy to answer, but I will answer what I think the target of it is, and if I miss it, please ask me a follow-up question. In a general sense, a municipal ordinance controlled by the city governing authority would be a lower level or lower tier offense than a state offense. A number of years ago, Councilman Hall spearheaded a change in the ordinance related to marijuana. And in that ordinance, as I recall it, it did not require, or in fact, dissuaded the arrest of individuals for simple possession of marijuana, whereas there is at the same time a state offense for possession of marijuana. That state offense, if the person is arrested, they'll be booked into either the city facility, if it exists, or the county facility. That could turn on a law enforcement officer's judgment and on policy directives of that agency. If the person is charged with a state offense, there is a greater likelihood, depending on the offense, that they would be fingerprinted. Certainly that occurs during the bookend process, but they're more likely to be fingerprinted and a criminal history actually created based on that fingerprint. There will be a lot more discretion from, I believe, both the law enforcement officer on the ground, and if the city prosecutor is engaged, less of a punitive nature for a city ordinance. The question of whether, if I heard this question right, whether the city should do away with city ordinances, if that is a question, my thoughts as a citizen of our great county and the city of Atlanta would be that you are then turning more of the enforcement of offenses that might be able to be resolved through a city offense over to the state court system, because the law enforcement officer will be then left with making a state court charging decision. As Sheriff Labat mentioned earlier, many of the troopers or other law enforcement agencies that were engaged in making arrest decisions during recent protests, certainly the non-trooper officers had the option of using a city ordinance or the option of using a state offense, that state offense is more likely, still officer discretion with some exceptions, most likely going to land them in the Fulton County Jail if it begins with a state charge. I hope that helps, but I'm here to answer any follow-up based on that, Madam President.
You answered my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Gamage. Mr. Mazakite, are you there?
All right. Let me make sure I'm off.
Mr. Mazakite. Ms. Lindo, do you still see Mr. Mazakite sign in, or has he dropped off? Or do you know?
Madam Chair, Mr. Councilman Mazakite is no longer on the line.
Okay. We'll move on then. I'll ask a few questions. Sheriff Labat. Are there plans to build a new jail for Fulton County?
So we are in the embryonic state of that conversation. So several of the commissioners and I, especially the ones that have visited, as well as the county manager, have started that conversation. In the best of all worlds, my goal would be to try and break ground within a year and a half.
So there is a plan with Fulton County to, because we're not talking about saving Rice Street, you're talking about building a new jail. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So to that extent, and I believe I know where you're going, we have, as a county, with good intentions, have spent more than $1 billion over the last 10 years trying to retrofit Fulton County. And so whether we create some kind of land swap, there are 55 acres of land that Fulton County, that Rice Street sits on, or whether we do some large clearing, I suggest that we've begun that state. And in my 30 years of being in law enforcement, it's been a very sincere conversation. So I'm excited about what that looks like.
So as we look at where you are now in your existing facility, and one of the reasons you all are saying we need it because of the fact that you have a huge overage and, your conditions are horrible. What happens when you all contemplate building a new jail within the next 2 to 3 years? Would you build it at a larger capacity? Are you, what are you all looking at building it out in terms of capacity?
So I use the DeKalb County model. They built 2 structures, 2 facilities simultaneously working together, 2 towers. And so while they only have maybe 2,000 inmates, and don't quote me on the exact number, they have the capacity to hold upwards 3,500, close to 4,000 inmates. So we have to look beyond where we are. Unfortunately, when we opened Rice Street 32 years ago, it was at capacity. And so, I know there are a lot of people that say if you build it, they will come. The one thing that has proven is that we've not been able to stem the tide of people committing crimes. We've been able to push back on some of that. And strategically, I would suggest at the very least, we have a facility that holds 4,000 to 5,000 people. We could use, if land appropriated accordingly, we could use the model they use in Gwinnett County that allows for no height, a 2-story structure that resembles a spider web, if you will. And so you could continue. You don't have to build all 5,000 bed spaces now, but as your needs grow, as things change, you would have an opportunity to continue to build additional bed space.
So if we're looking at, sounds like what you're looking at, even in terms of right now with the ACDC, is maybe a short-term solution to your overcapacity. Or I also saw in your presentation where and I think it was on page 12, you talked about opportunities, or even, I don't know if that's either or combination as to what we are now. What you talked about was housing. For instance, if we use ACDC, I mean, what are you contemplating putting there? Would you bring it in some of your folks over there? How would you use it? Would you bring in your youth programs for female detainees? How would you use the ACD facility? What are you contemplating in terms of who would you have there?
So that's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear. First of all, ACDC would provide a much needed stopgap as we continue to move forward building a new facility. But to your question directly, I would see that as the future home of a serious programmatic facility, so that on every floor we had different programs, much of the same programs that the mayor envisions, right? Even to include a pre-arrest diversionary program. So there are opportunities that we could use ACDC as a stopgap, a relief valve as we continue to progress forward, and then turn it into something that requires programmatically, in many instances, like the PAT 3 program, requires oversight from the state side, but at the same time, we could then continue to be very, very, very forward-thinking types of programs we could have. And then at the same time, still servicing the municipal side of the conversation.
So the other question I'm having, I noticed in your presentation you talked about the fact that Fulton County is in direct supervision and that ACD was built for direct supervision. Can you define, again, the difference between the two? I just want to get clarity before I ask another question.
No worries. So with direct supervision, when you, and you'll see this firsthand, I know you do plan on visiting, with direct supervision, what happens?
By the way, I have been to Fulton County Jail. So
yes.
Even though I haven't been up under your leadership, but I've had 2 tours there already, so I'm familiar with the jail. But I'll be back next week. Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate that. And I will submit to you, I know Leadership Atlanta is a fantastic opportunity for us all, and I certainly appreciate your leadership. What I have told everyone since becoming sheriff is we are going to be transparent. Look, even before I got there, there were people trying to slap paint on walls to tell me how beautiful the place was. And even in the kitchen, they want to tell me that it's 100% health code compliant. All that's just, let's put it this way, we do a better job now of being transparent. And so
when I went, I didn't see it as that pretty either. So even, I know I heard Ms. Moore talk about how horrible it is. Even during that time, and we actually went to tour both jails at the same time when I was at Leadership Atlanta and a couple other times. And, yes, and there's a difference, night and day difference. It really is a night and day difference. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I apologize. But to answer your question directly, with linear supervision, there's generally, and I should have put pictures in of the actual units in the actual slide presentation, so please forgive me. But in linear supervision, there's generally one person in a tower that's responsible for viewing or watching several different areas. And those areas in and of themselves, you have housing units, pods or dorms, whatever you call them. But in direct supervision, and yes, direct supervision is more labor intensive, but in direct supervision, in those same dorms, it is set up for a person to be in those dorms, taking care of the needs of those in custody to each pod or each unit. So, and that happens 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so when we came from 236 Peachtree Street, better known as Gateway now, I was adamantly opposed to the direct supervision model until I got into the direct supervision model, until I worked it, until I was able to clearly understand that one of the caveats in the model and having an individual directly in those units together with those in custody, it provides better communication. It provides less destructiveness of the actual equipment. In most direct supervision models, you move from rigid and stainless steel materials to ceramic materials. So I will submit to you that the wave of the future is direct supervision, and in and of itself, it is a more humane way to treat those that you provide care and custody to.
Yeah, that was what my assumption was in terms of direct supervision, is that it's much more humane. And from a psychological perspective, if you got people in indirect supervision, like what we've seen over at Rice Street, I can imagine people just kind of going kind of crazy over there with that. And that doesn't help in terms of what they look at it psychologically in terms of turning them around. So I can see that. Now, again, the percentage that I said you had in terms of there, that's going to only decrease if we use ACDC. If you use that, that will only decrease about a certain percentage. And then again, are you contemplating putting a certain group of people in there? Is that what I just heard you say? Not yes. How would you determine who would you put there?
Yes, ma'am. And to your point, and I apologize if I didn't answer. We will focus on. There are a couple of options for us too. We can focus on having our youthful offender programs there, both our women entrepreneurial programs, and holistically the ladies in South Fulton, the South Fulton Act, mental health, again, building that out so that we have a wonderful opportunity to have first-in-class mental health programs, both partnering with Grady Hospital and Emory. We already mentioned the PAT 3 program being there as well, and still simultaneously taking care of our mental health, our municipal offenders, and being allowed to have an opportunity to make sure, as you heard Solicitor Gamage talk about, the level in which the different level of offenders we could still maintain. I say all the time, if it were not for people helping me make the right decision, a lot of would still be, at least at the very least, in that in the municipal offenders category. And those people have done a great job. Those in the court system there, you heard Solicitor Gamage talk about Solicitor Rain Carter and his team. Great job of helping those, especially our youthful offenders, move from not having adult supervision for the rest of their life into being really productive citizens. So we could actually be very specific and make it to include pre-arrest verdicts, right? That could be in some instances where we house that program and really start the charges themselves from the embryonic stage of how, if I'm not sure if you remember, some people may remember where we actually housed solicitors at the back door to help determine and interview at the back door of ACDC, help determine the level of the charge, and as well as the person's record being on display there, so that we could, in fact, do a better job of how we service individuals that were in custody.
Okay. So last question. If this was even contemplated, would you see it in terms of either your purchases, Fulton County running ACDC, but our percentage that we have in terms of our misdemeanors, that would not be run by Fulton County. That would still be run by the City of Atlanta Corrections Department. Is that correct?
No, I would. The way I envision it is we would just run it all. We would make sure we continue to provide services for the municipal and the city charges, and that gives employees different opportunities to advance through or matriculate through their career. And so we would be providing that service as well. We just have to work out the details from there.
All right. There may be other options that can be contemplated. I'm not sure as we talk about the pros and cons of if this is even considered. There may be some other options. But thank you for your answers. Does anyone else have questions?
Councilmember Brown.
Okay, thank you. And then after that, we maybe can hear from the mayor's office in terms of what they think. But Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
And Sheriff Labatt, appreciate you walking through your plan for the Atlanta Detention Center. And thank you also to Solicitor Gamage for being on the call. You know, Sheriff, I've been a big fan of your Path 3 program since I came on to council. And, you know, we had a discussion as a council member where both of my parents were incarcerated at the age of 12. I watched as the side effects of a criminal justice system that contributed to mass incarceration and the privatization of our prison system destroy our family structure, pushing us into further poverty. And, you know, I've never been able to understand that why as a country, why we haven't gotten to a place of true rehabilitation within our prison system. I mean, you can look at other countries that have actually done it and been successful in rehabilitating and readapting folks that have come through their prison systems back into society. So I wanted to ask you specifically, what's taken Fulton County's jail so long to really create a structure like this? You know, is there a funding issue within the county around the jail allowing this to come to fruition, being able to truly create a center for rehabilitation and reentry?
So, Councilmember Brown, first let me thank you for your engagement, both internal to the Path 3 program as well as external in making sure at ACDC and beyond that we continue to have honest and genuine conversations. So I appreciate the leadership there. If you'd have asked that question before I was sworn in, I'd have told you it was, as I ran for office, I told you it was leadership, right, at the very top. And subsequently, being here 47 days, I'll tell you that Fulton County and the Fulton County Sheriff's Office have some of the best employees, both deputies, detention officers, civilians, in the country. And so the one thing I have noticed is that, admittedly, right, the county has a different posture on some things as we move forward. And so while some of the leadership in the past has been stuck right there in the past, the county and the county leadership, especially Vice Chair Hall and you know, I say I need Khadijah every day, and certainly Commissioner Arrington and you know, you heard me talk about Commissioner Pitts or Chairman Pitts, but the county's bigger than that. So I've had an opportunity to meet with Commissioner Liz Housen, as well as Bob Ellison, and certainly Lee Morris. The one thing that has rung true in the past is that the county has been probably 10 years behind the rest of the world. And so to get to the heart of your question, for us it's about leadership. And so with that, we have collectively, everybody I mentioned, been very thoughtful about how we move the sheriff's office forward. And so we've come in with a lot of energy. And sometimes you just need a new set of eyes and a new opportunity, as you did, right, when I would watch from afar when you first got to the council level. So for me, it is being active and engaged and encouraging that from our leadership. And that includes the leadership of the actual government, if you will, as it were, the governing body with respect to the Board of Commissioners. So we are it's a new sheriff in town, and please pardon the pun, but you have, and you and I've talked about this quite often, you got to care, right? You got to care. And then the other piece about what we're doing is you heard me say earlier, I ran for sheriff twice before. And so having to be in that space and having to been chief for 10 years, we were very laser focused on looking beyond where we are right now and how could we do better for our community. That was the embryonic stage, or that's how PAT 3 was born. But then we are, even now, to your point, we are embracing different reentry programs. You hear me brag about PAT 3 all the time, but we're not stopping at the county limit. We're talking to other sheriffs, there are 159 sheriffs in the state. We're talking to sheriffs in the metro area about how we collectively can embrace law enforcement. And you've heard me say this. As rough of a time it is, or has been over the last couple of years in law enforcement, I still firmly believe that it is our job as the sheriff's office to extend the olive branch to our community to continue to move forward. Sometimes we have to have non-popular, fierce conversations. And that is quite simply that. And I know I'll get a lot of feedback with respect to my stance on where we are. But I believe you know this, that we are, to a point, very sincere about how we really change what our community looks like. And we can either sit at the table together and have the conversation, or it becomes more destructive. And so I've chosen the first part where I've said, you heard me say, where we agree, right, whether it be the administration and certainly the Board of Commissioners, where we agree we need to exercise that, our communities will be better for it. And so, to that end, I try, and this is the mantra that 1/1/21, when I became sheriff, I've encouraged our team specifically, and I think we need to do more of this. Leave the past in the past, right? We need to figure out how to focus on the future, and this is the future of that conversation, and we have to have a realistic conversation about it. And so, I thank you for your leadership, as well as, at times we have to have fierce conversations to make sure we serve our constituents better. And so I appreciate that. I hope that answers your question. And if it is,
absolutely, Sheriff. Yeah, I have a few more things that I just want to talk to you about.
Absolutely.
The mayor recently issued a memorandum to you. Well, it was actually to Fulton County Chairman Pitt, and I think maybe you were copied on it. But she has acknowledged that she is not in support of selling ACDC. So I'm gonna. What will you do as the new sheriff to accomplish the goals you've set forth within your plans that you've outlined today, if you were not able to acquire the city jail? And then I have a piggyback question on that. How much funding do you believe, and it could just be an estimate, right? How much funding do you think you need to accomplish the goal of a true rehabilitation center that's conducive of reentry into society, with or without the purchase of ACDC?
So both great questions, and let me, I hate to sound like a broken record. Let me be clear. I was not copied on that letter. And so the one thing that we have to do is improve our communication. I believe the mayor is resolute in her position, and I applaud that. But that's why I brought up the ICE situation. Be it prophetic or not, the fact of the matter is it occurred. And so the mayor has exclusive rights, if you will, for lack of a better word, to negotiate on behalf of the city. And she's more than capable of doing that. I would and simply ask, and this is the thing you got to keep in mind. So right now, you know, like I know, you can't please everybody. But I still haven't heard in 3 years, going on 3.5 years, what the recommendations are and how we're going to move forward as an administration, as a city. And so one of the things that happens, and I can attest to this being, you know, a subject matter expert, for lack of a better word, what ends up happening when you have a building that large that continues to be empty, you end up in a space much like the Alpharetta jail, where it begins to decay. The general use of it is something we need to figure out how it makes sense. And I have said, someone mentioned earlier, I have said, if we're not going to do anything with that facility inside 6 months, right, and I've said this publicly and privately, then, we need to be able to use it. Taxpayers of Fulton County as well as Atlanta help pay for the facility in some aspects. Anything that we do moving forward, I absolutely applaud the mayor for creating a center of equity. In theory, at this point, part of what we need to do, though, is take some of that money and put it into Gateway, for instance. Right? If we're going to spend $150 million on one building, why would we leave one that is currently dilapidating and not providing some of the services by nature of the building? Let me be clear. There are people over, Mr. Holloway over at Gateway, Tim Holloway and his team are doing a great job. But that's the other component when you start talking about the Fulton County Jail. We're in crisis mode. And so we're chasing our tail to make sure we create a humane environment every day. But that crisis mode leads to, again, as I mentioned earlier, more than $1 billion being spent over 10 years in crisis mode. It goes back to exactly what we talked about just seconds ago, and being bold enough to have the conversation. And the citizens of Fulton County, and certainly holistically, deserve a sheriff that's bold enough to have the conversation, board of commissioners that's bold enough to have the conversation, and both the city council that's bold enough to have the conversation. So I simply wouldn't be doing my job if this didn't make logistical sense. And so with that, understand.
Sheriff, really quick, I'm so sorry. My phone is getting ready to go dead, and I apologize. I'm in my car. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I love you to death. But really quick, if I could just ask a question. The city is vested into criminal justice reform. We've seen it, or the city is vested based on what we've seen the city speak about in regards to criminal justice reform. I think that a big part of criminal justice reform in this city is the Fulton County Jail. So let's go worst case scenario. You don't get the jail that you want, right? You don't get ACDC and it stays as an equity center and the city invests its money into turning that into that. How could the city enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County to help fund the rehabilitation of the Fulton County Jail to get it to a place where you believe it should be, whether that is, reimagining it, however you see it being? How much would that potentially cost? And you could just give me an estimate. How much would it cost for us to be able to accomplish that goal?
Again, thank you. But there is no more reinvesting into 901 Rice Street. It is, as I mentioned earlier, it is becoming what we all don't want, and that is a place where we will be forced by the courts to do something in terms of building a new facility. The investment holistically will be in making sure that we build a new facility. And so whether the city council members get behind that, because we have to treat people, that it's proven that the better we treat people, the better the results are, the easier it is in terms of criminal justice reform to say that. But the one thing we cannot do is turn a blind eye to what actually happens every day. And if we've invested $1 billion over 10 years, how much more do we need to invest? We have to build a new facility that is in direct correlation with the best practices in the actual industry. We will still have overcrowding if we don't move the needle on this. We will still have poor conditions that don't move toward criminal justice reform. And so we have to do that holistically. There is not a one Rice Street has to go. We just have to be able to partner to be able to do it. And so while I applaud the efforts of the mayor to create the Center of Equity, my intent is to make sure we clearly understand in the next 4 to 6 months, we can do better as a community, both from COVID standpoint and both in how we treat people, with allowing some kind of lease purchase. We just cannot turn a blind eye to what's going on. We didn't turn a blind eye, according to the administration, with respect to ICE, and we shouldn't do it less than 3 miles away off Jefferson Street at 901 Rice Street. We shouldn't do that either. And so I appreciate all the passion you bring to the conversation, but if $1 billion won't fix it, then we need to figure out how to spend $2 billion and really do something that impacts our communities, because we can do it simultaneously. One is not dependent on the other. We have to do this simultaneously and ultimately creating a win-win situation for everyone.
Got you. So just for a point of clarity, Sheriff Labat, there is no amount of money that, right, and you could just say yes or no, there's no amount of money that can turn Rice Street, the Fulton County Jail, into a true rehabilitation center, like the plans that you've laid out if you were to acquire ACDC.
Yeah, there's no amount of money. We need to rebuild, right? We're in you may be too young to remember the War of Roses, right? The movie where they were trying to rehab I may be telling my age, let's put it that way, where they were rehabbing that house for years on end because it was a money pit, right? There's no amount of money, because when you get to a certain projection level, we should in fact be looking at a new facility and a new, more humane facility. Yeah. So if we can spend $1 billion and not get it right, then, but a lot, to your point, right? A lot goes back to council members. A lot goes back to leadership and where we land from there.
Just a few more questions, Sheriff Labat. Do you know offhand how many repeat offenders that have endured recidivism that have come out of the Fulton County jail?
Let me look through some of these stats. We haven't dealt with the repeat offender piece in terms of statistically putting that analysis together, so I can get that for you. And we've done everything except we've done demographics. We've done a couple different things from there, but I'll get that to you post haste.
And with regards to that question, would you be implementing programming to really deal with recidivism? Because, like I was saying, I remember my mom went to prison for 5 years. When she came out, there was no Path 3 program, and there were no real resources for her to truly be able to readapt back into society. And she was forced to find herself doing illegal things again just for her to sustain our family. And then it just caused her to be in this cycle of recidivism that never ended.
So let me answer that. And you and I have had these conversations, and I certainly appreciate your passion around this. One of the passions I have is reentry, is having the #1 program in the country. It really hurt my heart to watch it diminish, the PAT 3 program in and of itself. But we have a wonderful opportunity together between the county and the city to redefine reentry and create an environment that creates the #1 reentry program across the country. Even on a larger scale, we've just been we'll be able to partner to get these things done. And so we share the same passion. I always appreciate that, but rest assured that we'll be able to expand those opportunities, and we're doing so now. I'm not waiting. I am not going to let the physical structure inhibit our opportunities as we get ready to look at reentry programs, look at programmatic changes. Will they be more effective if we had ACDC? Absolutely. Will we stop trying to do them simply because that is not, because we're limited by space? No, we're not going to stop, right? We need to make sure that we expand these efforts. And one thing that's important to note with the PAT 3 program, those offenders came from the state DLC. And so 80 to 90% of those folks, about 75 to 85%, are coming back to the Atlanta metro area. And that was a great start. But what we will have an opportunity to do with a merger like this, and I call it merger, whether it be acquisition or whether it be lease, et cetera, we will have an opportunity to affect our own community immediately. And so there are people that, because we can restructure the program with the power of the sheriff's office to make sure that we expand the program and offer it to those more than just coming out of the state, but offer it to those persons affected at the city level, the county level, and still continue the state level reentry program.
Thank you, Sheriff Labat. And Madam Chair, I just have 3 more questions, and I'll yield back to you. Sheriff Labat, you were instrumental in assisting me and my colleagues with drafting the Department of Public Safety and Wellness legislation that unanimously passed through council to determine the feasibility of establishing this new department and a division of non-emergency response and a non-emergency response number. What's your thoughts on the legislation and how it could contribute to your plans and the residents within the city of Atlanta?
So, first of all, I have not seen it in its entirety, but on the surface, one of the things, I applaud any legislation that its intent is to make sure we do better as a community, as law enforcement. And if I recall, one of the things that we discussed with I'm just blatantly transparent and honest, with the actual legislation is the public safety plan from the perspective of oversight. So I think we need to rethink that piece and make sure that we, as a leader, right, as a sheriff, and I certainly won't speak for Chief Bryant, I appreciate your willingness to engage in the conversation and create this level of a public safety plan, right? And we talked about from the commissioner level to where we used to be, right? One thing we do is we learn from the past, and I appreciate that about the approach. I think we fine-tune it to the point that it services the city better. We actually had similar thoughts on that overall legislation and program, and it's one of the things that I first took to the mayor when she took over. We tried it. I don't know. I wasn't intimately involved in the commissioner piece as much as understanding how it worked. I think there's an opportunity there. And so I do appreciate your allowing me some input into that conversation as we've discussed it. With a little fine tuning, I think it'll really set Atlanta apart. And so again, I applaud your efforts in making that happen. And I look forward to continuing that conversation. And I think you're on the right path, and you being full, right? One of the things that I say all the time to my team, and you've heard me say this, is, and this is the kind of beyond the box thinking. I don't tell people to think outside the box, because that means there's a box for you to be in. But if you remove the box and you remove all the alternatives, we find ourselves in the same space, and that's working together on that type of legislation. So thank you for your leadership there.
Absolutely. Hey, Sheriff, just two more questions. Would you say that
Mr. Brown, can you please wrap up? I got people saying that they may have to leave and they want to ask a few more questions. So can you kind of wrap it up so that we can make sure we get everybody in? Thank you.
Absolutely. Sheriff Labat, would you say that your number one goal or one of your number one goals of the Fulton County Jail is to bring the population down?
Absolutely. And we are being very creative about what that looks like. We are now, here's the piece that I left out, and I certainly didn't mean to leave it out intentionally, and I want to make sure I respect everybody's time. While we have 2,900 individuals incarcerated, allegedly having committed a crime, in more than 99% of those cases, we also have a victim or an alleged victim. And so we absolutely have to be considerate of those that have been victimized. And so I don't want to lose sight or lose visionary sight of the fact that in many instances, there are victims that have and deserve a level of attention in this conversation as well. And so quite simply, my goal is to reduce the population, but we have to do it in a thoughtful manner and making sure we're not putting criminals back on the street. And so there needs to be a level of oversight there, and we just have to do a better job as law enforcement.
And my last question is, have you reviewed the Project South report done on the ACDC facility on the issues of Atlanta's immigration cases?
Yeah, yes, I reviewed it adamantly. Make sure people understand when they bring it, it was propaganda at best. You do not get to they don't give you accreditation. That's 362 standards that you have to meet. And you don't get to have accreditation as a gift for 10 years. You meet those standards or you don't. You don't get to have 100% health score for both housing and food distribution for 10 years if you don't meet those standards. So I'll tell anybody, including the author of the paper, it was propaganda meant to go down the road of ending us boarding ICE detainees. So, and I said that. The difference here is, though, even then, as inaccurate as it was, I wasn't the sheriff. I worked for, and I worked for the city. And so the difference is now, let somebody put that kind of propaganda out, and you'll see the editorial response with the proof to not let the sheriff's office be bullied in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So it's propaganda then, it's propaganda now. And so, for lack of better words, you can tell the people that wrote it, come see me now.
Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you for your time. Thank you for, answering my questions, and I appreciate you and Jackie. And Madam Chair, I will yield back to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Hillis. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
He had to ask, and I didn't recognize him. So, Mr. Hillis, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman Shepherd. First and foremost, I just want to thank you, Chairwoman Shepherd, for organizing this session between us and Fulton County today. I think it's extremely important that when we make these important decisions that we communicate and work together with our counterparts at the county. And this is what working together looks like. Working together works, and we need a lot more of it for the benefit of our city and county. I want both to succeed, and if our taxpayers in the city look at our tax bills, we pay a similar amount to both the city and the county. So this is an important conversation to have. With that, I want to sincerely thank Sheriff Labatt, Solicitor Gamage, and others maybe on from Fulton County. I've not been on the whole call, unfortunately, for joining us today as we have these important conversations before making a decision on ACDC's future. With the recent tour that I went on with Sheriff Labatt and his great staff and Councilmember Westmoreland, Councilmember Ide, certainly see the need for another facility to house nonviolent, low-level, short-term offenders, and believe ACDC can certainly serve that purpose. That would, one, create a dedicated facility for those inmates so they're not housed in the same facility with violent offenders. And two, that would substantially reduce the population of Rice Street so inmates can be housed in more accommodating conditions. We heard a lot about the conditions of this jail. All this said, it's a very needed and short-term solution while our partners at the county assess building a new facility, which is going to cost a whole lot of money and take some time. But all of that considered, myself and I think others can still support, a vision for an equity center that's proposed by the commission and by Mayor Bottoms, and the goals that are envisioned to be achieved by that. And I think we can work together to see both of those happen. Just maybe not both at ACDC, which of course is a jail is a very specifically designed and built piece of infrastructure. If we decided tomorrow that, we didn't need it and we wanted to tear it down, well, that's probably at least $20 million, if not more. So just wanted to add my thoughts. And again, thank you, Chairwoman Shepherd, for organizing this, and thanks, Sheriff Labatt, Solicitor Gamage, and any others from Fulton County that have joined us. So for that, back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hillis. I want to say one last thing, and then I'm getting ready to turn it over to the mayor's office for them to come in and give their opinion and comment. But I will say that, as I'm listening, just like what Mr. Hillis just said, we are, as a city, for me, I'm looking at crime across the city. Our crime is up in the city of Atlanta. And citizens are asking the question, crime is up. So even though we're looking at ACDC in terms of the fact that these are misdemeanors, these are not major crimes, and reforming and doing all these different things, where our crime is, our problem is in the city, as Labatt talked about in terms of lockup, aggravated assault, 320 theft, 233 firearms, 241 batteries, 211 people, murder, 311 people. These are crimes that are actually plaguing our city just continuously every day. The Atlanta Police Department, he just also said that 41% of the people who are locked up at the jail are with the city of Atlanta. So there's no way that we can say we can isolate the two of them and that one don't have anything to do with the other. These are still crimes that are happening in the city of Atlanta. So to that point, as we talk about collaboration, we have to collaborate. But I also want to make sure that we're not having the tail wagging the donkey, because, to be honest with you, we talk about the jail system, but why is it that crime is up? As Labat already talked about, 730 people that are in jail now, they've been there for 365 days because they can't go to court. Now, we know that's COVID-19, but we also know that there's a revolving door in terms of some of the things that happen in terms of crime. So as we talk about collaborating, we also need to be collaborating in terms of with our Fulton County District Attorney and our General Solicitor's Office to talk about, and our judges to talk about why is it that our crime is up. We need to be doing a deep dive analysis of all of this because crime is up. And we can say on the city side, well, we're locking up misdemeanors and the problem is over there, but we're locking them up and taking them over to the county, to the state. And are they reforming them? What's happening over there? So I know we can't answer that today. I'm just saying, as we look at this, we got to look at this very holistically, not in some isolated little silo of this particular thing, because the problem exists. There's another problem that's so much bigger than this that exists. It's causing a lot of plague and problems in our city. So we need to be addressing that. I'm going to be asking Mr. Gamish and Ms. Willis to come back to our Public Safety Committee meeting and begin to have these conversations, because I think that we got to look at that comprehensively also. So I'm just letting you all know that. But I appreciate Sheriff Labat, you being here. Mr. Gamish, I appreciate you being here. I'm looking forward to working with you all. But we got a lot of work to do. Thank you. Now, with that...
Madam Chair, it's Labat. Can I take 30 seconds, one, to thank you and certainly the council members and certainly the audience. I have had the pleasure, as I mentioned, for 47 days to be the sheriff. I have sworn in nearly 900 Fulton County Sheriff's Office members. 700 to 800 of those members are deputies and detention officers. And just as I took an oath, I think it important and not robbery to mention this. During the oath that I give them and the one that I took, it says, I do swear that I will well and truly do and perform all and singular duties of jailer for the county of Fulton, and that I will humanely treat prisoners who may be brought to the jail of which I am keeper, and not to suffer them escape by any negligence or inattention of mine. So there's a Fulton County Sheriff's Office that's standing by, standing ready to work collaboratively with not just the city of Atlanta, but the other 14 cities in turn. So thank you for the opportunity. And certainly I will be on the call continuously until we end, and certainly thank each of you for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Sheriff Labat. I appreciate you so much. We're now, Mr. King from the mayor's office, our COO. Are you there?
Councilmember Shepherd, this is John King, Chief Operating Officer. Can you hear me?
Yes, and a lot of people want to hear your opinion of this, and so we're waiting anxiously to hear what you got to say.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you again, Councilmember Shepherd. And, let me just start by saying that Sheriff Labat is someone that I greatly admire and respect as a leader, as a public servant, and as a person. And I enjoyed the time that we were able to work together while he was at the city, and I certainly look forward to continuing to work together with Sheriff Labat and all of Fulton County moving forward. I also appreciate the opportunity for this discussion today. And as Sheriff Labat stated, there are many areas of commonality like diversion, rehabilitation, and reentry. So, in my opinion, it certainly makes sense to focus there. As an example, further expansion of the existing PAT 3 program is part of the proposed justice reform plan. We continue to welcome the opportunity to partner with Fulton County on all public safety and justice reform efforts, and we've had success in doing so. So it's much appreciated. On
I'll keep this quick, but let me start by responding to one question that was asked. Council President Moore asked a question related to municipal versus state charges and how the proposed plan would impact that. And apologies for not responding then, but I was unable to get off mute. I need to make sure it's clear that the proposed justice reform plan does not change anything related to arrests being processed into the jurisdiction of the municipal court. We have not proposed to eliminate municipal charges in that plan. There is a part of the plan related to eliminating incarceration as a penalty for certain municipal charges. It is also worth noting that the data shows that our APD officers have not increased the number of people being taken to Fulton County for processing. The vast majority have been and will continue to be processed into the jurisdiction of the municipal court. Now, specifically on the presentation today, the bottom line is that the presentation, it does provide a different vision for justice in the city of Atlanta than the one proposed in the Justice Reform Plan. The presentation today does expand incarceration in the heart of our city, and there are significant issues with a belief that services are best provided and change best happens for low-level offenders when they are incarcerated. And the mayor was clear in her letter to Chairman Pitts that the vision for the facility and for that land is to serve a higher and better purpose for our city than incarceration. And finally, the decisions under consideration related to the Justice Reform Plan that has been proposed are not focused on the short term. The plan is not about solving short-term Fulton County facility issues related to the pandemic. There are inhumane conditions that must be solved. And as Sheriff Labatt stated, Fulton County must make the necessary long-term investments. The plan that has been proposed is about long-term decisions. It's about a vision for public safety and equity in our city through justice reforms and our justice system, and how we change our operations, how we provide improved support services, and how we most effectively utilize space in the heart of our city to accomplish that. We've put forward a clear 5-point plan to accomplish that vision. We've also put forth plans to address violent crime, and we are executing against those plans. We appreciate the partnership with Fulton County on both the efforts related to addressing violent crime as well as the efforts related to our justice reforms. And so I'll just end with that and say thank you again, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. King. I appreciate your feedback. We will be having more conversations. You all know this is, again, just another of our series. There's a tour next week for Fulton County, and then we will be having another work session, I believe, on March the 4th. So thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Labatt, Mr. Gamish, Mr. King, everybody involved for this, and I appreciate that. We have another hour and 5 minutes of public comment, but thank everybody for coming. Thank you. Ms. Linda, are we ready for public? Thank you. Ms. Linda, are you ready for public comment?
Yes, one moment, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Just one more moment. We'll be starting momentarily.
Welch, and I live at 1457 Bryanwood Road, and it's actually Decatur, Georgia, but I'm not in the city limits. And even though I'm not a resident of Atlanta, I do quite a bit of business in Atlanta, and it's entirely possible I will be someday. And I'm calling in regard to closing the detention center. And yes, it needs to be closed. It needs to be closed as soon as possible. I think Atlanta can do better. I think we can come up with better solutions than putting people in jails and prisons, and more effective solutions from a healthcare standpoint, from a poverty standpoint. It's just better to provide services, other alternatives to putting people in jails. Jails do not work. And thank you for letting me record this message. Bye.
Hi, my name is Nadia Hicks, and I am a constituent of District 2. I am calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor close the Atlanta City Detention Center. As residents of Atlanta, we will feel safe when our city begins to pursue equitable and just solutions instead of jails. We will feel safe when the city prioritizes taking care of their people instead of creating more harm against them with jails. We will feel safe when the reimagining ACDC task force vision of the Center for Equity exists and comes to life. Please close the jail as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Angela Jang, and I am a resident of the city of Atlanta from the Garden Hills neighborhood, District 7. I'm calling to request that the city council move to close Atlanta City Detention Center. I have called for the 10 past times, and I'm not really sure or clear on what the holdup is. The closure must happen as soon as possible, and the city council deserves to keep their promise to close it. Folks, we all know that the folks who are mainly held in city jail are mainly suffering from poverty or experiencing homelessness. And after a summer of uprisings in support of racial justice, you know, we had already made commitments to close this jail, and we are taking far too long. There are many voters like myself who will be voting in November of this year, and that police accountability and closure of the ACDC is going to be a top priority for us. And elected officials only as strong as their word. And when officials have failed to keep their promises to help those in need, you have failed, and you will not win our votes. Thank you, and please do the right thing by closing the ACDC. Bye.
Hi, my name is Annie Fortnow, and I live in Sandy Springs, Georgia. I am calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. We are no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on a center for equity. Thank you.
My name is Rula Abisandra. I live in Cabbagetown in District 5. My council member is Madeline Archibong, and I'm calling to once again urge all of City Council to proceed with plans of closing the Atlanta jail, not repurposing it, not transferring it over to Fulton County, just closing it, raising it if necessary, and rebuilding something that actually serves the community in its place. I don't know why it has taken so long. I don't know why there are continuous efforts to pull the rug out from under this plan. I think that it is a good plan that was developed with community input, with many stakeholders involved, and City Council and the mayor committed to it, to closing the jail without any ifs, ands, or buts, none of this bait and switch. And so that's what needs to happen. You may call me back if need be at 404-273-7858. I urge you to please continue with the commitment, and we will be watching to see what happens. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Meg Watson, and I live in Cokewood, and I'm calling to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. This has gone on for too long. The closure of the jail is long overdue. We were promised it was going to be closed several months ago. most people there haven't even had trials yet. Most people are there simply because they can't afford to either pay fees or pay bail. It's also punishing homelessness, and we need to be taking care of our homeless folks and our people who have, other issues that have put them in jail for minor violations, or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We need to be pursuing equitable and just solutions, and I'm calling on the City Council to help make Georgia and Atlanta a vision of the future, to working toward more equity and justice and rethinking our justice system in a way that helps us all. And frankly, when we have more economic and health equity, then we also have less crime all around. So I know that we can do it. We can make the change that we can be the change we wish to see in the world. And I know that we have the ability to do it here in Atlanta. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Katie Nurses, and I reside in the neighborhood of Kirkwood. I'm calling to demand that the City Council members stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta and support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. I think a lot of these issues that the sheriff's proposal is trying to address are really problems that are manifestations of larger social issues. But rather than trying to provide the adequate support to address these problems, we've decided to meet them head on by criminalizing poverty and homelessness. We need to be addressing the root causes of these issues, not criminalizing those who are falling victim to them. Keeping this jail running, in no matter what manifestation, would mean continuing to rely on a system of punishment, one that disproportionately targets Black people, rather than providing the support that our communities need. This type of system is destructive, not restorative. The Reimagining ACDC Task Force has already invested their time, energy, and labor to develop a plan, one that creates the space and leverages resources from closing the Atlanta City Detention Center to provide a community-centric and just solution to the struggles that Atlanteans face. So I encourage this council to close the jail as soon as possible and to continue breaking ground on the Center for Equity that the task force has proposed. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Admiran, and I work in downtown Atlanta. I'm calling to once again support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. It needs to happen as soon as possible. It's long overdue. I support jail closure because we just lived through a bunch of racial uprisings, and the ACDC is just a facility that carries Black and brown people. Why would we respond to those uprisings by keeping the jail open that disproportionately targets Black people? The task force has put in so many hours of time and energy and labor to come up with a plan for a Center for Equity, which I support. And if we want to truly keep Atlanta safe, we need to be pursuing solutions like the Center for Equity, not more jails. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Bullard. I live at 3535 Roswell Road in the Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta. I am calling to once again support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. This needs to happen as soon as possible. And, I support jail closure because we need to look for other solutions instead of jailing people that are homeless and people that are living in poverty. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scotty Crow. I am a resident of Atlanta, currently living in West End. I'm calling to once again support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. The closure of the ACDC needs to happen as soon as possible. Again, I feel as if a closing date was messaged out and then has become questionable, and the citizens of Atlanta are owed this closure in so many ways. I personally support the jail closure. I don't believe that the criminalization of poverty and homelessness is a path to equity or racial justice, and all the lessons that I think we've learned in 2020. I have dear friends who have been formerly incarcerated, and to see their humanity stripped from them from the overcriminalization of people in our community is heartbreaking. And so I think that closing the ACDC is a step in the right direction in so many ways. You probably are aware, but as a reminder, the Reimagining ACDC Task Force has put in so much time, energy, resources, labor to come up with a plan for a Center for Equity, which is the kind of space and resource that our city actually needs and deserves. And in order to keep Atlanta truly safe, we should be pursuing solutions such as the Center for Equity, as opposed to keeping institutions like the ACDC open. So thank you so much for your support, your courage, and your continued ear listening to the voice of the community. And we hope that you will continue to support those who do support you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jake Gallant, and I live in District 6 of the city. And I'm calling just to say, I want the jail to be turned into the Center for Equity, because you as a city promised to close it a year or two ago, and it still hasn't happened. It's really important that it gets closed down as soon as possible and gets transformed, because that would be sending a great message. So, yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Allegra Knight. I live at 1095 Bailiff Court Northeast, Brookhaven, Georgia. I am calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. We are no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail, stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on the new Center for Equity. Thank you so much. Please vote on the side of justice.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Radistic, and I'm calling to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. And this closure needs to happen as soon as possible. Personally, I support closure of the jail because Atlanta has criminalized poverty and homelessness for quite some time now, and I don't think that's very representative of what the city of Atlanta means to me. And keeping a jail open that disproportionately targets Black people just doesn't seem to jive very well with how the city of Atlanta reacted to various events over the summer in terms of racial justice. And ultimately, to truly keep Atlanta safe, we need to be pursuing equitable and just solutions, not more jails. Thank you. Hello, my name is Wendy Parcells. I live in Fulton County in zip code 30344, particularly East Point. I live around a lot of people who are affected by the inequalities of the judicial system in the city, and I strongly urge the council to forge ahead with closing the Atlanta City Detention Center. There has been wonderful work put into strategically identifying ways for restorative justice and equitable growth in the city, and they have many wonderful plans for an equity center instead of the Atlanta City Detention Center that I think would be excellent options for improving racial disparities in the city. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Tatanchi. I'm a 20-plus year resident of Atlanta, specifically the Grant Park neighborhood. And I am calling again to urge City Council to close the Atlanta City Detention Center. We are ready to see that building closed and transformed into a center for equity. We believe this center of equity that has been reimagined by our leaders is what we need for our city to be even better than it is now. Please heed our call and close ACDC immediately. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Benita Stanley. I live at 3078 Rebecca Drive in Southwest Atlanta in the Cascade area. I am calling to ask that the city council members and the mayor stop the jail expansion. We really do need to close the Atlanta City Detention Center. We are no longer in the business of jailing. That is a direct quote from Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. I'm holding her to that promise. I would really like for you to close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations that you got from the community, and really to break ground on the new Center for Equity. I personally don't think that housing so very few people in a jail is a good use of my tax dollars, and I would rather see that money go to funding programs, supportive services, mental health treatment, housing, and other wraparound services people who are struggling in poverty need. So please halt the jail expansion. Please close the city jail and repurpose it to the Center of Equity and Wellness. Thank you so much, Benita Stanley, Ivan Hill, Southwest Atlanta, taxpayer, homeowner, small business owner. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for taking time to listen to my call. My name is Quaylen Bobbitt. I am a resident of Lithonia, Georgia. I used to live in the West End when I went to school back at Morehouse. Currently, I'm calling you to ask that we close the Atlanta City Detention Center. I know some time ago we spoke once we were there in person, demanding it, and we saw that there was change that seemed to be occurring. Mayor Lance Bottom, she came out to the detention center and she saw some papers signed, and we thought that, change was really going to come. And now we see that this process has been held up. And I don't think that's good for our city in the long run. I mean, that detention center can be used for a bunch of things, whether it be like a recycling center where, we can practice working on some things. It could be one room or one floor, really. It could be like a greenhouse. We could do another space, or when it's freezing outside and we need the people that are out there, whether it be like the homeless people, the homeless vets that we have that are out in the cities, they could use that if we need one for like, one that could be like a floor or, a food pantry where people are just packing their food to like help bring it to the community or anything like that. There's so many other things that we can use that building for, other than what it's being used for currently. And I'd really appreciate it if, as a city, we can make that step forward. I think it would be great, not only for just the citizens in our community, but for the council members as well as Mayor Lance Bottoms. All of you say, look, we take steps in the right direction to help move our city and really the nation forward. I mean, you saw what Georgia was able to do with the nation and how we were able to elect the two senators that we have now. Just think about the power that could start just starting here at home, turning this detention center into really a community center. And that community, like we said, can be used for a bunch of different things. And we can really be setting the precedent for what the nation can be doing with a lot of their other jail systems and a lot of other prisons and detention centers nationwide, worldwide, really. I mean, we're the Black Mecca. I mean, what we do is going to make a difference. So I think that's one thing that we can do to make that difference. All right, you all. Thank you again. Quaylen Bobbitt. Peace.
Hi, my name is Amy Ard. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am calling, I guess a little bit confused because I thought we were much further or much closer to finding a really transformative use for the Atlanta City Detention Center. And my understanding and seemed to be that the mayor had a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around repurposing that facility. And I am concerned that we are moving backwards. I'm concerned that we are criminalizing poverty, that the effects of opening up a detention center again will be most strongly felt by Black people and the poor. And I think that's moving backwards. We have a plan to repurpose it as a center for equity, a design and a purpose that I thought was so forward thinking would move Atlanta in such a positive direction. And I'm just really urging the City Council not to move backwards. Thank you for listening to my comment, and I really hope that we can count on you to move Atlanta forwards, not backwards. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Mary. I live in the Old Fourth Ward, and I'm calling to demand that the City Council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city jail. Something that makes me proud to be an Atlanta resident is that we're not in the jail business any longer. It's something that makes me proud to see our city leadership invest in alternatives to incarceration, things that actually keep our communities safe, and being a leader on the national forefront to demonstrate how we can do that. And so I've been incredibly disappointed to see that the jail is not closed yet. And I strongly encourage our city council and mayor to close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations and break ground on a Center for Equity in Atlanta, this place we love and call home. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Taylor Kinzer. I'm an educator that lives in Almond Park, and I'm regarding the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. I'm 100% in support of closing the jail. Y'all said you would do this a long time ago, and this is probably like the 10th call I've made. I just want to say that the closure needs to happen as soon as possible. It's way overdue. And I would also like to say that reimagining the ACDC task force has put in countless hours of time, energy, and labor to come up with a plan for the Center of Equity. And that if we want to truly keep Atlanta safe, we need to be pursuing equitable and just solutions, not more jails. We need to change this. Y'all need to do this. Please do the right thing. Please close the jail down. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kyle Jarozinski, and I'm calling to urge the City Council and the Mayor to stay strong and move forward with their plans to close the Atlanta City Detention Center. Atlanta is no longer and should not be in the business of criminalizing poverty and homelessness, and that jail needs to close. And I also urge the City Council and the Mayor to continue forward and accept and break ground on a Center for Equity. The jail needs to close and a Center for Equity needs to open. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Natasha Harrison. I am a City of Atlanta business owner located in the zip code 30313 at the Gathering Spot, 384 North Yard Boulevard, Northwest. That is building 100, suite 190. I am calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. We are no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail as promised and stay on the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on a Center for Equity. Black people need to be protected. Thank you and have a great day.
Hi, my name is Shira Conkle, and I'm a mental health counselor serving all of Metro Atlanta residents. I'm calling to demand that the City Council members and our mayor, as you promised, stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. You're not in the jailing business, as you have said. So please close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations by Atlanta citizens to break ground on the Center for Equity and Wellness. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brianna Minton, and I live in Greater Atlanta, actually in Union City. I'm just calling to make sure that those in charge are doing everything they can to immediately close the city jail and stop jail extension in the city of Atlanta. If we want to make sure that we care about our citizens, we care about each and every person, that no one should be measured by their worst mistake, or especially, as the vast majority of cases are, by poverty and by homelessness. If we want to take care of our people, then we have to make it urgent. Those are the things that people that are elected vowed to do, and that's not been done, especially with the closing of ACDC jail detention center. It's been far too long. I understand that there's a pandemic. There are people that are here on the ground working and putting women on the rise that would love to help. and so many people that care. So the opportunity to make a decision now is there. The hands and the bodies and the money is there. If we really want to keep Atlanta safe, we need to be pursuing solutions that are just and fair, not just locking people up. Not gone are the days that we do that. Just urging you all to do that as soon as possible, and I'll continue to spread the word to urge for our citizens to urge that this happen as soon as possible. It's way too long. Thanks so much. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you guys, and safety to each of you that hear this call and take this seriously. I hope that you take this seriously. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi there, my name is Asa Kramer-Dickey. I'm calling as a resident of the City of Atlanta and a voter here. I live in Grant Park, District 2, City Council District 2. I'm calling to oppose the plan to give the Atlanta City Detention Center to the Fulton County. Calling again and again and again. You all at City Council committed to close this jail long ago. The Reimagining ACDC Task Force has put in countless hours of time, energy, labor to come up with a plan for a Center for Equity and Freedom. Jails do not keep the city safe in this time of a global pandemic. Rolling back bail reform to keep people locked in jail, just locking people in jail, criminalizing poverty and homelessness is not what we should be investing our time in, our energy, our money in as a city. And you, City Council, have a responsibility to uphold the entire city and make sure everyone is safe. And time and again, people have shown you that that is not, more jails is not what keeps people safe. And so I urge you to commit to Atlanta City Detention Center like you have committed before, and I encourage you to actually make sure that closure can happen. Thank you for your time.
I'm Erica Redfield Gansey, and I work in downtown Atlanta. I'm calling today to once again implore the City Council to close the Atlanta City Detention Center immediately. James Foreman Jr. wrote a book called Locking Up Our Own: Crime and Punishment in Black America. In it, he explores the war on crime and how Black leaders contributed to the mass incarceration epidemic. We now know how devastating mass incarceration has been for Black and Brown communities. Now that we know better, we must do better. We can't agree that mass incarceration is a dire problem that disproportionately impacts Black and Brown people while simultaneously feeding the mass incarceration beast. The Atlanta City Detention Center needs to close because that was the promise that the mayor made, because many experts have spent many hours reimagining it as a place for community uplift, and because we should be a part of the solution to mass incarceration rather than a staunch contributor to it. Thank you.
Yes, hello. My name is Rita Valenti. I live in Clarkston, Georgia. I'm a registered nurse, and I worked at Grady for 30 years. I saw many patients, many of whom were incarcerated really for being poor. I am hoping that you close the Atlanta City Jail. It serves no purpose. And to invest in developing a center for equity in Atlanta, the city, the home of Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you very much. Please close this jail. It's a symbol of incarceration in our city, in a city that's trying to move from a carceral society to a caring society. And I appreciate very much your listening to my comment. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Bennett Alterman. I live in Ponce Highlands neighborhood in Atlanta. And I'm calling to demand city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion in the city of Atlanta. We're no longer in the jailing business. Close that jail, stay the course, implement recommendations to break ground on the Center for Equity. Thank you.
Hey, this is Nolan Huber Rhodes. I'm a resident and voter here in Atlanta, and I was calling to demand the City Council follow through with the mayor's plan to close Atlanta City Detention Center and turn it into a center for wellness and equity. I further just want to say, please, please, please do not sell this jail, repurpose this jail, whatever you want to call it, to the sheriff's office, especially to Sheriff Labatt's office. This would be a step in the wrong direction, and Atlanta would be going more into the jailing business if we did this. Please do not do this. I further want to say that I was already not a fan of this plan, but I had an experience just this week with an officer from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. I pulled up to drop off sleeping bags to unhoused Atlantans, whom, by the way, the city had turned away at the warming center because I guess it was too full in 20-degree weather. I pulled up to bring sleeping bags in 20-degree weather to unhoused friends here in Atlanta, and an officer from Sheriff Labatt's office approached us and was concerned about my car blocking a non-existent driveway, one that was not being used for at least another 8 hours. This officer did not come up concerned that residents of Atlanta were unhoused in 20-degree weather. He was not concerned about whether or not they were getting the food and shelter that they needed. He was only concerned about causing a stir, about creating a problem. It was already a bad idea, but this to me just further shows that the sheriff's office, Sheriff Labatt in Fulton County, has no business coming into Atlanta, buying a jail and using it to jail people. Please, please, please do not follow through with this plan. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, my name is Erin Keys from the Trojan Park neighborhood of Atlanta. I am calling in pursuit of closing the Atlanta City Detention Center. I've mentioned this goal to Carla Smith prior, who recommended my colleagues and I communicate through this pathway for wider engagement. We are interested in timely closure for a number of reasons, such as the noted and clear intent to criminalize poverty, particularly focused on discriminatory policies towards Black and brown communities. Furthermore, with capacity at roughly 2% of total volume, the millions of dollars of taxpayer money spent on maintaining the jail are a gross misuse of funds. As well, with little to no evidence towards the effectiveness of carceral punishment on reducing perceived harm from petty or nuisance crime events, nor preventing violent or aggravated crime, the overall approach of the City of Atlanta's criminal legal system is ripe for critique, restructuring, and implementation of evidence-based programs. It is clear and pivotal that the City of Atlanta needs to take action to equitably protect citizens, addressing root causes of crime and preventing further divisive policy surrounding criminality. Finally, with commitment and authorization to close the jail from the mayoral office, it is the responsibility of City Council to finalize and communicate thorough plans on any developments to Atlanta City Detention Center closure. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brad Beatles, and I'm calling today to voice my support for the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. It's something that has been on the table for a long time now and has yet to happen. This is something that we want to close as soon as possible, and we don't want to hand it over to Fulton County and Sheriff Labatt. We want to close it. And I support a jail closure because it's time that we end the criminalization of poverty and homelessness. Criminalization of these two disproportionately targets our Black and brown communities here in Atlanta. So I'd like to point your attention back to the Reimagining ACDC Task Force, and I ask you to take the recommendations for the Center for Equity, and that the way to a safe Atlanta is ensuring that people have the resources that they need, not more harm induced by incarceration. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa McCusker,
and I am calling to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. ACDC needs to be closed as soon as possible. It is long overdue. I personally do not feel that the city should be using jailing and the carceral system to in the idea of bettering the city. We have so much brilliance and leadership in our minds in the citizens of Atlanta. And if you would just listen to the people who work so hard on the task force to reimagine ACDC and to move forward with the Center for Equity, we could really be doing something in Atlanta that would create lasting change and not just a Band-Aid solution that increases the injustice of the city, all of the racial disparities that we all live through every day. You need to be thinking about long-term, how can Atlanta be a better place to live for all of us? And you're not showing that in your actions if you choose to keep ACDC.
Hello, my name is Megan Jennings. I am a resident of Atlanta. I live in the Cameron Park neighborhood. I can't believe I have to call yet again to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion in the city of Atlanta. I'm no longer interested in the jailing business. We need to close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on the Center for Equity. I am a social worker who lives in the city of Atlanta. It is irresponsible and disgusting the way we jail Black and brown people. We need to stop doing that. We need to close the jail. I can't believe how many times I've had to call to tell city council to do this. Jails do not make us safer at all. So please close the jail, and the citizens are holding you accountable. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maggie Nesbitt, and I'm calling to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. I believe that this is an example of how Atlanta has criminalized poverty and homelessness, and I believe that Atlanta can lead the way to doing something different with this facility. The ACDC task force has put in countless hours of time, energy, and labor to come up with a plan for the Center of Equality, Center for Equality, and that's what we need for Atlanta to be safe. We need to pursue equitable and just solutions, not more jails. Thank you for considering the work that is being done. Good evening. Hi, my name is Amanda Ruffle, and I live on City Line Avenue in Old Fourth Ward. And I'm calling again to urge City Council to stay the course and close the Atlanta City Detention Center as soon as possible. I really think that we're not a city that wants to be known for continued racial inequity, which is exactly what the current city jail represents. Also, the ACDC task force has put a lot of time and energy and labor into coming up with a plan for a Center of Equity. And I think we really want, if we truly want to keep Atlanta safe, we need to be pursuing equitable and just solutions, not more jails. So please, I do beg of you, please move forward with closing the Atlanta City Detention Center and instead support moving towards a Center of Equity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophie Kelly. I'm a resident of Atlanta in the Edgewood neighborhood. I'm calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. We are no longer in the jailing business. So again, I support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center, and the closure needs to happen as soon as possible. The closure of the jail is really long overdue. And I recommend that we stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on a Center for Equity. If we want to truly keep Atlanta safe, we need to be pursuing equitable and just solutions, not more jails. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.
Good
Hello, City Council. My name is Atia Hawley, and I live in the West End neighborhood. I've called the City Council several times over the last few months, and I'm calling again to implore the Council and Mayor to follow through on plans to stop relying on cages to address inequality in Atlanta. A task force of experts on community restoration and renewal has outlined a plan forward, a plan that no longer invests in cages for the Black, brown, and poor in Atlanta. If we're truly committed to addressing poverty, public safety, and untreated mental illness in this city, we will make the Center for Wellness and Freedom a reality. Jails do not make us better. Indeed, all they do is cage those without means with no discernible effect on public safety. It is time for the city to stop seeking security in jails and to turn to the community-based solutions proposed by the Reimagining ACDC Task Force. It is time to close ACDC. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kaya Hutt. I'm an Atlanta resident in Virginia Highlands. I'm calling to demand that you all close the Atlanta jail immediately. It should have been closed a long time ago. Calling to demand that you immediately close down the jail because I personally believe that resources used to fund policing and prisons and jails could be better used for things like social programs, things that actually benefit the community instead of harming them. And that includes the Center for Equity. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Quinn. I live at 74 Howard Street in Kirkwood, and I'm just calling to call on the members of City Council to close the Atlanta City Detention Center. I'm a teacher, and I'm seeing over and over the effects of over-incarceration, the cruelty of our incarceration system, and just the meaninglessness and the harm that it's causing Black communities, poor communities, immigrant communities, our communities in Atlanta. We've been promised that the jail is going to close. This is what the people want. This is what our mayor supports. And it's just very disappointing to see that there's any other options being entertained when this is what has been promised. This is what people have been working towards. This is what the people of Atlanta are demanding. For someone else to purchase the jail and use it to incarcerate more people, we need to be looking at lowering the amount of people who are incarcerated and leading the way in Atlanta, in Georgia, and in the South, leading the way towards decreasing mass incarceration and actually moving towards more equitable justice. We've seen protests across our city all last year. It's going to continue. It's time for y'all to do the right thing, to keep your promise, and to close the jail so that my students don't have to continue to have this harm and to see their communities torn apart. Thank you for listening, and I'm just hoping that y'all do the right thing.
My name is Yolanda Rossell, and I'm a resident of Atlanta. I live in the West Midtown area, and I'm calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. We are no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on the Center for Equity.
Hi, my name is Sarah Satola. I live at 52 Rose Clare Drive in East Lake in Atlanta. I'm calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail expansion into the city of Atlanta. We are no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on a Center for Equity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sterling Gardner. I'm a resident of the Upper West Side neighborhood in Atlanta, and I'm calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop jail expansion in the city of Atlanta. The mayor and the city council have already promised to shut down the Atlanta State Detention Center. We are in a pandemic. We do not need more people jailed, and we are no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail on course to implement the recommendations to break ground on a Center for Equity. The people of Atlanta let it be known over the summer they would prefer something like a Center of Equity that's given back to the community over continuing to jail people and feed into the prison system. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Rabideau, and I am a resident of Atlanta. I live in the Grant Park neighborhood. I'm calling once again to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center.
and urge my city councilors to close this jail as soon as possible. I support this jail closure because I have witnessed firsthand in my profession as a legal advocate and a legal support, as well as in my just actions as a community member. I've witnessed the harm that this jail has caused in separating families, in worsening mental health challenges and physical health challenges, and depriving people of medical care, in separating people from resources and important support systems and displacing them from their homes. All of this has caused so much harm to our community and people who are in the most need of support. And I urge you to listen to the ACDC Reimagining Task Force, who have put so much time and energy into imagining what our community really does need and what will support people and get them back on their feet and address their needs in ways that jail never can. So I urge you to close the ACDC and create something better in its place to truly bring about healing and support for our community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Neef. I am a resident of Atlanta. I live in Midtown, and I'm calling about closing the city jail. And I want the city council members and the mayor to follow through on the implementation of the recommendations for the Equity Center and to limit the use of jails in our city as much as possible. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Lila Gibbons, and I work in the Atlanta area, specifically for a nonprofit that's funded by Kaiser Permanente, based out of the Buckhead office. And I'm calling to urge the City Council to close the Atlanta City Detention Center as soon as possible and stick to the plan and the promises that were made by Mayor Bottoms, by the Reimagine ACDC task force that put in so much time, energy, and labor to come up with a plan for Center for Equity. And that plan has been highlighted and praised on a national level. The nonprofit that I work for has health equity trainings, and ACDC, Reimagining ACDC, is an example that my national nonprofit is using as an example of an equitable way forward. And we should stick to that plan. It's being highlighted nationally. And so I personally, support closing this jail because I feel like we don't need to criminalize poverty. We don't need to criminalize homelessness. It disproportionately impacts Black and brown citizens in our city. And we need to reimagine what safety looks like. Safety is economic stability. It's taking care of people through healthcare when there's a pandemic going on. The uptick in crime is not just because people are suddenly criminals. It's because of the social conditions around the pandemic that we know impact public safety. Police and putting people in cages does not make our community safer. In fact, it destabilizes them further and creates more inequities and therefore, more struggles in the future. So I'm calling once again to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. It needs to be turned into a center for equity like the community says that it wants. And so many people put time and energy. Do not listen to the few voices that are trying to capitalize on this moment. Don't listen to the few voices in Buckhead. The city is broader than Buckhead. You need to listen to the entire city of Atlanta. And the city of Atlanta has said time and time again, that we need to defund police. And so there were 14 hours of public comment this summer about defunding the Atlanta police. And so closing ACDC is a part of that. It is a part of moving towards what actually will make our community safe.
Hi, my name is Riley DeGarmo. I'm a Georgia resident. I'm calling to ask the City Council of Atlanta please support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center and follow through on this commitment as soon as possible. I personally support the jail closure because I believe that we need to be reinvesting in the wellness and potential of our communities rather than criminalizing poverty and homelessness. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.
Hello, my name is Mercy Montgomery. I'm calling this evening again to express my support for the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. I know that this closure has been discussed for a long time and that a really fantastic and inclusive advisory group has been convened with specific recommendations to repurpose this facility, as well as outlining the critical need for its closure and for decarceration in the city of Atlanta. Folks in this jail are there because we've chosen to criminalize poverty and homelessness. And I know that this is not the city that we all want to live in and build up. We have a really unique opportunity to take a big step forward with the closure of this jail and focus instead on reinvesting in our community. The task force has put in a significant amount of time, energy, labor, and care to come up with a plan for a Center for Equity that's going to better serve our community. And I hope that you'll take on the recommendations of the task force, implement them, and make the long overdue decision to close the jail. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lee Giordano. I'm a resident of Atlanta in the Edgewood area. I'm calling to demand that Atlanta City Council and Mayor Bottoms stop considering transitioning the Atlanta City Detention Center into a jail owned by Fulton County. We shouldn't be thinking about how to create more beds in jails in Atlanta. We should be thinking about alternatives to incarceration. We have a lot of good programs in Atlanta that are doing this, and we should be investing in those. So I want us to stay the course and implement the recommendations to break ground a new Center for Equity. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Chris. I am a resident of Atlanta, and I'm calling once again to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. This is something we have been promised, and we are well past the mark for it to be closed down. So I think it's absolutely preposterous that we're now talking about reopening it, letting have another jail. That is not what we need in this town. We need to be keeping our community safe. We need to be thinking about decriminalizing poor people and homeless people, and that involves closing down ACDC. So I would just urge the city council members to think about this, to think about your public service to us, and commit yourselves to please stay in the line on this one. This is really important for our communities. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sarah Giordano. I live at 246 Connecticut Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia, 30307. I'm in the Lake Claire community, and I'm calling in regards to the meeting tomorrow to talk about closing the Atlanta City Detention Center. Well, I guess the meeting is set up to talk about, the recording just said, repurposing it. And I'd just like to, it's been a long time since the mayor promised to close it, and there's been a lot of people working to make the city a better place, and I'm not sure why we still don't have a date to know when the jail will be closed. So I'm urging the committee to set a date as soon as possible. I think there's no reason why the current jail can't be demolished before the end of 2021, and work with the task force that has actually put in a plan to create a wellness center based in community needs and led by community members, especially formerly incarcerated women of color who have put a lot of work into this. So I strongly support the work of Women on the Rise and the other folks from the Close the Jail campaign. I appreciate their work, and I hope that you actually use that work and make Atlanta the city that we would prefer to live in. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Paige Dukes. I live in South Atlanta. I was born and raised in Atlanta, and I am formerly incarcerated, and I work at the Southern Center for Human Rights. I'm calling really, I don't know how many times I've called about ACDC asking City Hall and Atlanta to keep its promise to the people who have worked and organized and demanded that the city jail be closed, the extra jail be closed. Now Labatt wants to acquire the jail for Fulton County now that he has seen the inside of his jail and apparently realized that the conditions there are terrible. I can tell you that I lived in the basement of Rice Street from 07 to 08, and the conditions were horrible then. They have been horrible for decades. And I think that if he really wants to do something about the jail, that's great. He should change the conditions. He should not be trying to obtain another jail so that it can, too, become another monument to mass incarceration with terrible conditions. ACDC is a monument to the criminalization of poverty, and we need to see it raised. We need to see a center for wellness and freedom, and we need to see those funds reinvested in the community in the form of services and wellness. You've heard us over and over and over, and we're tired of being ignored. Please give us a closure date for ACDC. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn Lee. I'm calling today for a message for the mayor and Atlanta council members. I'm calling about the closure of the ACDC detention center. This jail needs to close now. I personally hate this particular jail because it criminalizes poverty and homelessness and disproportionately impacts people of color. You need to cease and desist with your intent for jail expansion into Atlanta and go back and implement the plans that was put in place for the Center for Equity. That's the right thing to do. That was the plan. For you to just choose to take another course now is being a liar. You said that Atlanta would no longer be in the jailing business. If you expand this jail, you will be in the jailing business. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Erin Berman. I'm a resident of Reynoldstown on Hawthorne Street, and I'm calling because this has been a promise by City Council to the residents of Atlanta to get the Atlanta City Detention Center closed as soon as possible, and it's a promise that we have not seen kept. And I'm calling because I want to strongly support the closure of the jail. This has to happen as soon as possible, and we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. The jail has been operating at lowered capacity for quite a long time, but it's not enough. There's no reason anyone should be in this jail when we have all of these creative community solutions or better ways to repurpose that for the actual good of the community. We believe that, or I believe that the Reimagining ACDC Task Force has put in many hours of labor to come up with a better plan for Center for Equity. I myself have participated in town halls before to re-envision new ways to design this space. And once again, the people of Atlanta have worked so hard for this. We deserve answers and we deserve resolution and we deserve to have this promise kept. The jail should not still be open. Please close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations to create a Center for Equity. Thank you very much. Hi, this is Claire Hannapel calling as a resident of Atlanta, living in the Edgewood neighborhood off Moreland Ave. I'm calling once again to support the closure of Atlanta City Detention Center. This closure needs to happen as soon as possible because it's really long overdue. I personally support this jail closure because I know that Atlanta has a history of criminalizing poverty and homelessness, and I really don't want to live in a community that does that. Thanks so much for your support.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Adler. I am a resident of Grant Park, and I am also the Deputy Director of the ACLU of Georgia. and I'm calling in both of my capacities to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center and to really urge the City Council to stay the course from a decision that was made several years ago to close the jail and ultimately repurpose it not to be a detention center anymore, but instead to use the resources from it to create centers of equity. I understand that there are plans being considered to repurpose it to allow it to remain and function as a detention center or jail, which would totally contradict the decision that was made from the mayor and city council several years ago. And most importantly, there is such an opportunity to continue to lead the country by advocating and implementing alternatives to incarceration. We just urge you to stay the course from the decision that was made. There's been so many hours done by the Reimagining ACDC Task Force to, figure out a plan to close it responsibly and to come up with a plan for a Center for Equity, that it is almost baffling that we're still talking about whether or not to continue to use it as a detention center when we know that the right thing to do for economic and racial justice and civil rights and civil liberties is, in fact, to move away from the business of jailing. And we would be honored to work with the City Council and the Mayor's office to continue to put forward, to advance the plan to close the city jail. We urge that a date be set for 2021 and that we make it known that Atlanta is moving away from the jailing business. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Hi, my name is Shannon Coffin-Gajero, and I am calling in yet again to urge City Council and the Mayor's office to follow through on the promise to shutter our city jail, ACDC, and follow the recommendations of the task force, whom spent countless hours of labor and mind share to put forth recommendations. Selling the jail to Fulton County would be such a backslide after a summer of uprisings where our city reckoned with police brutality. I was once so proud of Atlanta for moving forward to end money bail, and then the mayor's first promise in her tenure as mayor was to close ACDC and say that the city is not in the business of housing and jailing people. So I just urge everyone involved, from the mayor's office to city council, and to you, Madam President, Felicia Moore, to really end this discussion with Fulton County to sell our jail. We know that who's in Fulton County is a whole lot of people waiting on pretrial detention. This is a matter of incarcerating those who are poor, those who are houseless, and there are other demographics that we know come into play based on who's disproportionately incarcerated. So, again, my name is Shannon. I live in the Virginia Highland neighborhood, 30306 zip code, and I implore you all, shut down the jail. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Helena Herring. I live in Midtown at 581 Greenwood Avenue Northeast. I'm calling because the city council members and our mayor need to stop jail expansion in the city of Atlanta. Y'all have said that we're not going to be in the jailing business, and so you need to shut it down, close the jail, and you put together this whole committee to reimagine what it could be like, and they gave you beautiful recommendations. So close the jail, and you need to break ground on the Center for Equity. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shantae McLaughlin, and I'm calling to request that you close the Atlanta City Detention Center. This closure must happen ASAP, and Mayor Bottoms needs to keep her promise that it's going to close. The reason why I personally support jail closure is because jail and institutionalization makes you almost like an animal. It dehumanizes you. It breaks up the family. And when it comes to the male detention centers, the male and female, God only knows what happens while inside. Those who are held in the city jail are there because Atlanta has criminalized poverty and homelessness. Do the right thing, Mayor Bottoms. Close the jail ATL and keep us safe. We appreciate your support and have a great evening.
Hello, my name is Marika Lamrell. I live in the Garden District of Midtown. I am calling because I support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. I think this closure needs to happen as soon as possible. I feel like I keep calling about this because it keeps being a need. I don't really understand why it hasn't happened yet. I know that there was a task force that put in a huge amount of time and labor to come up with a plan for a center for equity. And I know that everybody really wants Atlanta to be safe, and we need to be providing equitable and just solutions, and putting people in jail does not provide any more safety. It just makes people, think that there's more safety, but it's not actually any more safe. And it really doesn't make Atlanta any better. And it's not the Atlanta that I want to live in. So please do what you can to support the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eliza Namim. I'm a resident of Buckhead, and I'm calling to demand that the city council members and our mayor stop the jail extension into the city of Atlanta. We're no longer in the jailing business. Close the jail and stay the course to implement the recommendations to break ground on a Centers for Equity. Thank you.
Is that the end of public comment? Hello?
Hello. Hi. This is Councilmember Shepherd. It is the end of public comment. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate you all being here. Our next work session is March the 4th at 1 o'clock in the evening, where we will come to go back at everything we've looked at and do an assessment with the mayor's office. So again, thank everybody for coming. I appreciate you all.
Wait, slow down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great meeting.
It was a great meeting.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.